What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dan Mabry Project. This episode is with Desi Bourgeois. Desi is the owner-operator of Grown and Grazed, which is a food truck located in downtown Ruston, Louisiana, at the Heard Freight House Food Park. That's a mouthful. I keep messing it up. Heard Freight House Food Park. Yeah. If you're familiar with Ruston, it's right there by the railroad tracks. On Vienna, I believe, which is the northbound two-lane side of 167. But in this episode, we basically start from the beginning of Desi's life. Like I have a couple of these episodes and run through the gauntlet of his experiences and where he's been and what he's done. And man, he's had a wild ride, and a lot of it has to do with the food industry. And He ended up here in Louisiana Tech after growing up and cut off Louisiana, the edge of the world, basically. And he's gotten to see and do a lot and been involved in the kitchen and been involved in the business side of food. And he's got a really, really cool vision for downtown and what Ruston could be as a food destination. And that's something that I don't think we always think about, but there are a lot of people that visit places like New Orleans and Memphis and places like that because of the specialty food that they have. And I think the Desi's trying to build more of a community and a group of different foods, and he's doing it in the right way, I believe, by trying to keep it as local as possible and work with farmers in the area. And they don't allow styrofoam, and they've put out recycling bins and are separating their waste. And I just feel like he's set the precedent for the future of what food in Ruston and culture in Ruston can be. And they've got some big dreams for that little area and the abandoned building there that they're hoping to historically restore. And along with the mayor and the support of the town, I think that it can really be something spectacular, and it can really help Ruston to continue to grow as it has. But yeah, I know this one's super long, but it's full of adventure and packed full of stories, and I promise you will not get bored the entire time. This is an ad-free podcast, and I know my hair is long, but my money is not. And if you would like to support the podcast, if you find value in what I'm putting out, I do have a Patreon page. I am always trying to get rid of stickers. I have a ton of them. If you want to reach out to me for some stickers, hit me up on Instagram at dan.mabry. Other than that, go see Grown and Grazed. They're on Instagram at Grown and Grazed. And yeah, I mean, there is, if you live in the local area, if you live in Monroe, West Monroe, Shreveport, Alexandria, El Dorado, come check it out. There's a couple different places here at the food park and more on the way. And I really I can't wait to see what it develops into and how it influences the rest of the community around us to become a better, more sustainable, localized, economy, basically. And that really is what it's going to be eventually whenever we link up all those circles as we talk about here. So enjoy. Let me know what I can improve on. Leave a comment. Share with a friend. I'm always open to criticisms and guest suggestions. So hit me up and enjoy this podcast, because I did. We had a blast. Peace, guys.
Exactly where you are.
Yep. But yeah. Okay. What is your last name?
Bourgeois.
So Desi Bourgeois.
Yep. Desi Bourgeois.
And where are you from?
Cut off Louisiana originally. So I grew up actually a small town in It's called Galliano. It's kind of quirky because local postal, I guess, divides fall. Even though I'm physically in Galliano, Louisiana, my mailing address is cut off. So somebody asks what your address is, you tell them your mailing address.
Right.
And that's how they find you in the whole 9 yards. So
right.
Yeah, even though I lived in proper Galliano, Louisiana, I grew up in Cutoff, Louisiana.
Okay.
Accordingly. So South Lafourche Parish, or Lafourche Parish, south of south of Intercoastal Canal. So,
okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And grew up there all through high school
Yeah,
and everything?
I was born and raised there. We'll get to that born and raised thing in a minute, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, go right into
it.
Yeah.
But born and raised down there. Grew up down there, had a great childhood. It's Cajun country. I grew up hunting and fishing and
well, that's what grabs my attention is like your name is obviously very Cajun, but you don't necessarily have that thick accent, I guess. I'm sure it comes around sometimes, but
no, I've been around. So,
yeah.
It's I came to Tech. I left home and at the time it was it's like 7-hour drive to get here. Now you can make it in about 5.5, 5.25 hours if you're tricky. But it's like when I came here, there was no straight shot to come into Ruston. You had to either go through Mississippi or you had to come up through the state, but you had to like take all these side roads and turns. And there's a lot of construction going on, and you had to come around Alexandria, and so it was a really convoluted way to get here. So two things. One, I was one of like 3 kids who came from my high school that year to here. And there was only a couple of kids that I knew who were here, and I grew up in a small community, so we knew them.
Yeah.
But they were leaving; they were seniors, and I credit them with sort of giving me a reason to stay in Ruston. Because after my first quarter here, I was kind of like, "What the hell did I get myself into?"
Yeah, no doubt.
Like, what is going on? This place is crazy. The culture is different. Everything is different. Nothing clocks the same. Even though there's an outdoor sporting culture and the whole 9 yards, it's just not the same kind of culture, food wise, social wise, I grew up in a place where, families get together, you have big giant events, everybody's cooking, there's beer and wine and whatever else. And, even, 15, 16, 17 years old, it's perfectly legit for you to grab a beer,
Yeah.
And, even though the age of alcohol consumption at that point in time legally was 18, there were kids here who were 17 who never had a drink in their life. Also culturally, there were kids who never had a drink in their life and never wanted to.
Right.
It's like back home, it's just a social norm.
Yeah.
So culturally, all different. Food wise, socially wise, the whole nine. And you leave home for the first time and you're 7 hours away driving. It's not something you can do every weekend, like most kids are doing. So my first shock was really being here for a weekend. That first weekend after school started, and watching kids get in their cars and leave, and it's like all week long having trouble finding a parking spot, and then on the weekend, like there's 4 cars in the parking lot, and you're just like, wow.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because like that was something that I noticed while I was there, but it was also something that my parents said that it's been a thing for a very long time, and
it was a suitcase college, man.
Yeah.
And it's still somewhat. It's not as bad as it is, and I say bad, but I say bad in the terms of it's like we have an opportunity to keep kids here and do really cool stuff and kind of have them participate, be a part of the town, it's the reason we're back,
Yeah.
It's the reason I came back, this town has sort of missed its mark as a real true Southern college town, and I think the opportunities are presenting itself again. When I was here, it was a suitcase college, people knew it. The city and the school were kind of divided in that aspect. It was like, yeah, well, the kids leave anyway, so why do we want to spend any energy or effort trying to include Louisiana Tech into what is Ruston? And and I think it's a bigger detail. There's more in depth there. I have an opinion about it, but it may not be fact. But I think it's an observance that everybody who's come to school here or who grew up here kind of goes, looking back on it, goes, yeah, that's kind of the truth. It's like there was a divide, and I think that we're past that at this point, and that it's coming around. So
for sure,
it's like. But to get back to your question about that sort of no accent thing, so my roommate here, first roommate, was from Homer, Haynesville, and and his name's James Fry. And, you know, it's like, and you get these thick accents and on both sides.
Right, yeah.
So there has to be a level ground of communication. So I slow down and enunciate, and he says, "Do what?" And I get slower and enunciate, and you sort of get conscious about how you're speaking and the group of people that you're in. I mean, I go home for a day, and that fast the accent comes back.
Yeah.
And, you know, or if my mom is here visiting,
For sure.
know, or we got relatives around, that happens really fast. It's and I hear it, like, you know, it's like, and you're not conscious of it, but like, you know, 2 minutes in, you're like, oh wow, it just happened.
Yeah.
You know, I reverted that fast.
No doubt.
Yeah, so, you know, it's like you want to make yourself known and you want to be understood, and you know, you kind of, and I guess from an overall perspective, you don't want to stand out either at the same time. So you kind of slow down, you make yourself understood. People still know where you're from, but being in school here, leaving later, and moving myself to Vermont for culinary school and working up and down the East Coast, I've been around, and
you pick up
things here and there, and
for sure.
Eventually it kind of levels out and neutralizes. And you know, the fortunate part is, like, you know, when I was in Vermont, people could actually pronounce my name. Yeah. It's one of those things, you know, with Montreal an hour away.
Right.
French Canadians are everywhere. So French terms and French terminology are everywhere, and people get it and they understand it. So
that's funny.
It was a little bit different experience. But yeah, I mean, overall, you know, I mean, I grew up in South Louisiana, moved myself here to come to study architecture, and got myself a job in a restaurant, and kind of didn't look back. You know,
I guess that was my question, is like, what got you here? How did you get here? How did you find out about Ruston and tech, that kind of deal?
So my dad was the CFO for a tugboat company, an offshore tugboat company, and the insurance broker. And I remember, again, we're all small town. It's kind of like Ruston. Everybody knows everybody, and at some point, everybody works together, or, you know, works in the same field.
Yeah.
But Dad was the CFO at a tugboat company, and the insurance provider, the agent of the company, Terrio Dewey and Terrio, was Lynn Pierce, and Lynn played football here.
Okay.
But he's a couple of years older than my dad. He played football here in the end of the Bradshaw days. And his wife came to school here as well, and she just so happened to be my high school English teacher. She graduated from high school with my dad. Like most of my friends and most of my teachers' parents. My dad and my mom went to school with all of them.
Yeah.
And when we were kind of looking at universities, looking at schools, you know, I mean, LSU's a big player where I'm from. You know, lots of people go to LSU. I also, you know, Nicholls State University is only 30 minutes north of where I grew up. So people tend to either stay close to home and commute to Nicholls, or, you know, they venture off to USL at the time, which is ULL now, USL at the time, or LSU. And for that, I mean, it was a toss-up. It's like, LSU, do I go, you know, somewhere? What do I want to go? And we started looking at architecture programs, and Lynn and Ann both said, hey, you should really check out tech. They have a good reputation in engineering, and that's a possibility, but we also know that they have a great architecture school. They're still very hands-on. There's a lot of build design, and so we came up, we visited. I really liked the tour of the school. Great facilities. We went to a tech football game. Willie Rofe was playing.
Okay.
We got to watch Willie Rofe play, which was great. And I was like, you know what? This isn't a bad campus. I think I can survive here. I think I can do good here. And you know, I chose to come here. So
it wasn't the massive LSU, I guess.
It wasn't. Yeah, it's not the massive LSU thing. And I had so many friends going to LSU, and it would have been easy to go there. And, you know what I mean? Legitimately, after my first quarter, I thought, man, I'm going to pack this thing in. I'm going to go to, you know, in January, I'm going to start LSU because, you know, I don't know what I'm doing here. This is crazy, you know. And I credit, you know, Jody and Dirk, who are friends from back home, who were leaving here, going, just give it a break, you know, take some time. And a gentleman by the name of Ronnie Wiggins, who was the director of the Intramural Center, who said, give tech a full year. You don't like it, then go. You know, it's like, but, you know, give this place a chance. It's a good school. It's a great community. Just, you got to give it a chance.
Yeah.
and so I took their advice and kind of stuck it out that first year. And you know what? I mean, everybody was kind of right. So, I was hanging out with people with Dirk and Jody, who are friends of mine, hanging out with them, and they hung out with a bunch of people in fraternities. And so I was tagging along to fraternity parties in the spring and getting to know some people. So by the time spring was over, I was kind of like ready to come back in the fall and see all these people I'd met and was introduced to. I joined a fraternity here. So I'm a Teak alum here, and it's like, so you get back into school. At that point in time, things are changing. Dad's taking a new job, and it's like I got to find a job. So I started looking for a job and found one with fraternity brothers working at a little drive-in shop on California, the old Bulldog Drive-In. I was there for about maybe 4 or 5 months, I think. Before summer came along, and then when school started back up, I got a job at Trenton Street Cafe, which was downtown. It's currently the Remax office downtown for anybody who's familiar with downtown. But Trenton Street Cafe was kind of a staple. Dean and Larkin Norton. Dean started it with friends. He was a KA here. There was nothing for them to do really. There's a couple of places to go around. JJ's, Wilmart, all those kinds of places were all open, but nothing for people to go see live music, things like that in town really. There's a couple places, but nothing that they liked.
Yeah.
So they decided, hey, we're gonna have a restaurant dinner today. We're gonna clear it out. We're gonna turn it into a bar at night. We're gonna have live music, and did a great job. Brought a bunch of bands into town, and eventually that spun into Trenton Street Cafe. So a full-time cafe downstairs, Parrot's Head upstairs with music and the bar scene. And so I'd been to Parrot's Head a bunch. I'd eaten at Trenton Street, and friends of mine who were working in the kitchen were like, hey, we need help. If you come in right now, you can get a job. So I threw some shoes on, threw a shirt on, and went to work. And I hadn't looked back. Trenton Street was fun. I mean, it is the stereotypical crazy college kitchen scenario. I mean, you name it, it happened. Lots of fun and games. There's lots of goofing off, lots of parties, lots of everything. It was a fun time. But ultimately, everybody who worked in that kitchen really cared about their job, the food they were putting out, what they were doing out front, how the service went. Everybody cared. We really watched that business. Not necessarily out of, oh my God, the owners or whatever, it wasn't any of that. It was like, I like this place and I wanted to stay here. So I'm going to do a really good job, and people who came in that didn't do a really good job kind of got walked out, and it wasn't walked out like, oh, hey, you're terrible, we're getting you out of here. It was more like, it's like, you just give them enough crap.
Right, yeah, you just keep busting that guy's balls.
You just keep busting their balls, and eventually they're going to walk,
No doubt.
Matt McKinney, who happens to be on the radio in town, tells a great story about me, because I had a hell of a reputation for being an ass in the kitchen, and I think asshole is actually the most is really what everybody said.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. I mean, I agree. I probably was, and I probably still am to some extent, but Matt McKinney tells a story. I mean, just like, busting his chops about something and him getting pissed and like busting out the screen door and, hey, fuck you, I'm out of here. Yeah, you can have it. And then he said, he goes, I was 3 steps out the door when I heard you crack up laughing. He goes, I realized you were just jacking with me. He goes, but I just quit my job. It's like, probably good for him though. He does a great job at radio. So. But I thought that was, but that's the kind of stuff that, that went on in the kitchen. It was kind of back and forth banter. But after a few years, I figured out, it's like studying architecture, I'm doing okay. I feel like I'm accomplishing some things, but I'm not really. I'm not the best student. I'm not really focused at going to classes and really paying attention. I have a real problem with a professor, instructor reading a book at me and expecting me to learn something from it. I can read the book. I can learn from it myself. Right. So I had this really poor level of attentiveness to my attending classes for certain classes. I mean, other classes, man, it was like, I love this class. This guy's great. This lady's great. I really want to be there. I really want to learn. But ultimately, I mean, you figure out, it's like, I don't know that college is for me. I'd much rather be working where I'm working, doing some good, trying to get better at this and seeing where this takes me. And, at that point, the mind shift went, okay, culinary school seems like the option. And, just started looking. Had a friend whose brother, who actually lives here in Ruston, who's from Ruston. So John Shirley at Campatory Catering. Um, had been to New England Culinary Institute, and I've been looking at the big names, CIA in Hyde Park, New York, so Culinary Institutes of America, Johnson and Wales in Rhode Island, South Carolina. These guys had they were the big schools. They were the ones, cranking out, big time players in the game. They were the places where people went to,
Right.
who like, I need interns. I'm going to the CIA. I'm going to Johnson and Wales, and Necky was a tiny little school, started in the mid '80s, and extremely hands-on. Michel Leborn, who's a master chef of France, was the founding chef of the school. The guys who created, John Drano and Fran Voigt, decided like there's a better way to teach people how to cook, and it's not sitting in a classroom. It's not, hey, I'm going to show you how to do this. Hey, come repeat. And then, hey, you get a grade, check off, see you later. They're like, no, I think real world experience is valuable. I think that if you actually put some hands on food and you're serving something that you have to sell to a customer, it's going to teach you a better way to do this. And so they put their their theory to test, and it worked. And the school was really great, had a great reputation. Low student to teacher ratio, 7-to-1. I know most of my classes when I went there, it was more like 7-to-1, plus we had a chef instructor, like a sous chef instructor. So there was always somebody else in the kitchen. So, you could say it was like 3.5-to-1.
Yeah.
In those ratios. And I was looking for that. I want to be in an environment where I get to use my hands and touch the things and, do that. But I did... after learning about Necky, I kind of scheduled a meeting, and it's these little small things that still ring true to me today. And I'd applied to CIA, I applied to Johnson and Wales, I applied to Western Culinary Academy, I applied to CCA in California, and I got letters back from these people kind of right away. Hey, we received your application, and we're gonna look over it, and we'll get back to you. Once admission review goes on and all this other stuff. Well, I fill out a packet, I send it to Necky, and I get this phone call from a lady named Patricia Valentine. I mean, this was 1996 in January. This lady calls me and says, hey, my name's Patricia Valentine. And here we are, it's 2019, it's August, and I still remember that lady's name.
Yeah.
Because I talked to her over and over and over again. And I met her when I eventually got to school, and she took an active interest in what my experience was in the school. It's the little things that make the difference. I really thought CIA is where you go because they will find a place for you. And, despite the fact that it's very classroom driven and you sit there and you watch people do things, I'm like, but maybe, just maybe that's the right place. And I got that phone call, and she said, listen, Michel Leborn, who's the chef of the school, is going to be in Memphis. I see you're like 5 hours away. Can you make it any way you can make it? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to make it there. If you took the time to call me and do this, I'm like, I'm gone. So I scheduled a trip to Memphis, went to Memphis, met Chef Michel at the Peabody Hotel. He's a master chef of France. So there's a small collective group, I think 150 people. And the only way you get in is if one of them dies and the other 149 actually vote you in.
Okay.
The goal is to advance French culinary techniques. You have to be French. I think there are no women at this point that I'm aware of, but Julia Child's an honorary member of this organization. But these guys are highly skilled, highly reputable. They're all over the world, and their mission is French style food, teach you the basics, get you out there, advance French culture and French food. So I go to the Peabody Hotel. I get to meet him. I meet Jose Gutierrez, who's the executive chef of the Peabody there, and I get the tour of the kitchen, and then upstairs, and go to this meeting, and it's like, hey, why are you here?
Yeah.
And it's like, because I want to be, I work in a kitchen right now, and I do this, but man, I really want to be in a professional kitchen. He was like, and he said something that rings true today. With what I'm doing is, if you run he's like, if you run a hot dog cart like a professional, then it's a professional hot dog cart. And that's kind of like, wow. you know, and you don't put it into terms like that, but those kinds of things, those little statements, that little, like, I'm not worried about what kind of food you do. I'm worried about how you approach it, how you do it, how you execute it.
Yeah.
And if you do it the right way, with the right attitude and the right sense of purpose, then the end result is always going to be good, and it's going to show. And that rings true no matter where you're at or what kind of food you're doing. You know, some of my favorite places, you know, having left Austin to come in here, some of my favorite places are the simplest cuisine. They're nothing fussy, but the purpose behind them is really, really genuine. And they do a really good job of holding to that purpose and executing the end result, and making sure that you get what they intend. And that's really high quality food, very simply done, but in a really good environment, and contributes to their culture and what they're doing. And those are my favorite places to go. I've been to some really stuffy places, and I'm like, man, that's really good food, but God, I don't feel comfortable here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So
but-
what did these you know, famous French chefs, like, what did they think of this small town kid from Louisiana just like walking up?
No, I mean, like, so no, I mean, you know, those things are kind of their expectation. Like,
Yeah.
they know, you know, they know that it's their job. So, you know, the term chef is something that most people who cook their entire lives will never get, in one way or another. But, you know, it's like, people call me chef, and I'm like, okay, whatever, you know. And they say you earn the title over time, by your deeds, actions, and how you treat other people in the kitchen, and what you teach and what you pass on. You know, I mean, chef is literally chief leader. You know, I mean, that's what it is. And you know, some people get that, and they automatically are that leader. They're an educator. They're a mentor naturally, and it's really easy to call them chef.
Right.
Other people want that title, so they go to a culinary school and they get a little piece of paper and they're like, "I'm a chef."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they're not attentive. They don't know anything about cooking, you know, legitimately. And you know, it's like, it's all these things that don't equal the term. They think the piece of paper makes you a chef, and that's just not the truth. And most true chefs, I think, will bow down and say, it's like, I'm just a cook. You know, at the end of the day, I'm just a cook.
Yeah.
You know, I cook food every day, and I try to do my best job at it.
For sure.
You know, because you're only as good as your last meal. So, I mean, if you serve somebody a terrible meal, are you really a chef? You know, because they're going to be like, really? Like, you're going to call yourself chef?
Yeah.
You serve me that?
Right.
You know, so from that standpoint, most chefs are going to be like, you know, it's like, you call me chef, you know, because I think I've earned a title, you know, if somebody demands that, you know. But I mean, it's really a formal thing. And I mean, it really comes into play in places like hotels, and it's about hierarchy. It's really about command, chain of command,
Right.
you know, those kinds of things. But ultimately, you know, that title generally comes with a level of respect because you earned it. And most people do eventually earn that respect and get that title. But, you know, these guys, they're used to people coming in. They're used to the cocky attitude stuff. I mean, you know, even Chef Michelle, you know, he tells a story. He was like, I got fired 7 times in 1 week, you know, because I got out of my apprenticeship and my culinary training, and he's like, I knew it all, man. He was like, so I walked in that first back door. I'll show you how it's done, and see you later. Get out of here. You know, you don't know what you're doing. You're gonna peel potatoes. Go wash some dishes. You know. And he said, you know, when you're 23 years old and you're fresh out of school and you think you know it all, you're gonna get fired 7 times in a week.
Yeah.
You know, and until you realize you need to be humble and learn something before you actually start to contribute, you know, on that scale, then you're going to fail every time.
No
you know?
doubt.
But you have an opportunity to learn from everything you fail at. So, you know, I mean, hence I'm here. I mean, I've tried 3 different times to come back to this town. You know, hopefully this time it sticks.
Yeah.
You know, I think we are. I think we're going to stick.
Yeah.
You know, at this point. But, you know, I think that all goes back to that thing. It's like, you know, their expectation is that they're going to get some people who are really there to try and learn. And there's some people there who are there just for the token, and they're ready to walk away and call themselves a chef and be
Right.
out in the business.
It's
you
just
know?
they're seeking that title, I guess.
I think that the humbling part is that, you know, you go to a school like Culinary, and, you know, which is actually now, unfortunately, it's sort of the, you know, it's a dying breed because there's so many more culinary schools out there. There's so many high school programs. There's so many other this, you know, and it's in Burlington, Vermont. Well, it's in Montpelier, Vermont. It was, you know, it had 2 campuses, Montpelier and Burlington, when I was there. And, you know, I mean, I think 800 total students between first year, second year, and BA students there at 2 different campuses. So 2 years worth of active revolving students in school, and I think now it's 50 something students, and it sucks because we're sort of watching that model of expertise go away because nobody really wants to have a hands-on restaurant where you teach people how to do something and you collect some tuition, but you pay a lot of money to actually have a really nice product and all these things, and customers come in the door and they pay for these experiences. And if you're going to take 50 students in, you can't do that in one restaurant. You're going to have several of them, and those are expensive to run. And I think that's ultimately where Necky kind of missed that point. It was it's like it costs money to run all these restaurants and train in that environment, and they did a good job of it for a long time. But as soon as you have competition that maybe is not, it's not necessarily that it's cheaper, but it's easier. I don't have to have all the space. I don't have to have all the tools and equipment and kitchens and I was exposed to a lot there. I had a great education there, and then
that is kind of what I guess. Like, can you elaborate a little bit more on the school? Like, is that something like you just walked in and they start like real from the basics?
The school was actually very hands-on. From
right.
day one, you touch product that somebody else is going to use or sell. So, really fast paced. It's 3-month intervals, and each month is broken up into 2 intervals from there. So blocks, right? So you had a mod and blocks, 3 blocks, and each block is broken up into 2. So I had 7 people in my block, and we ran the first 2 weeks. My first 2 weeks there was in food theory and basics in cooking, right? But that food theory class and basics in cooking meant that we were building all the stocks and sauces for every other outlet of the facility.
Okay.
So while we may not have been making something that we directly sell to somebody, all those stocks got used in the hotel, got used in downtown, got used in the restaurants, got used everywhere. We made sauces. We did, basic knife skills. So when we cut things up, at the end of the day, they went, hey, this is going to be great. We're going to take this over catering. So because there's only 7 students in catering and they got 6 banquets going on, they don't have time to cut all their stuff, but they're second year students. They already have basics down. Hey, we're going to help them out by giving them some of this product and making this worthwhile for them. So you do that. And then the next 2 weeks is, it's a food history and a theory class. Well, even in that food history class, you're doing projects where you're doing an education piece that helps the BA students with their project. So I'm helping another student with a project that goes on here or something, so it's not just for nothing. You're actually learning something. You do a lot of interactive cooking. And in that class, you learn a lot about spices, right? So it's about international. It's about spices. There's an identifying thing, and I still have these things because they were great tools at the time. But basically, you took whole spices and we taped them to sheets, and like you identify them visually, but also by smell. So at the end of the class, you take a test, and the test is to actually blind smell and taste all these spices and identify them. And so you some of it's visual, some of it's taste. But you get to use all your senses to decide, what that thing is, and it's valuable because it's kind of muscle memory. You keep putting these things into your system, and you'll
I imagine you can figure out what's good and bad.
I guess it's not good and bad. It's more about pairing. Like you get these things where you have all of these sort of anise flavored or spices, right? Like fennel and fenugreek and anise and all of these things that are kind of taste very licoricey, caraway, and you understand that I might be able to use one of those in place of one of something else down the road, right? So you get a base and you say, this recipe calls for caraway seeds, but I don't have any. What else can I put in there? Well, you know what? I got fennel. I got a little fenugreek over here. I've got some anise. Maybe one of those can substitute for that, right? We make rye bread in the trailer right now. So we make rye bread probably 3 times a week, 4 times a week at least, and we use a ton of caraway. So it's like that caraway flavor profile can be repeated in other spices, and if you're in a pinch, knowing that, you can actually save or rescue your scenario. And on the other side of that is that once you realize that certain base flavors pair well with other things, so orange and fennel kind of go together, right? So now I can take all these orangey flavor profiles, and I can put them together with all these anise flavor profiles and end up with some pretty good combinations. So you make flavor relationships that way.
Yeah.
That's very hands-on.
Yeah.
While I didn't sell anything directly in that class.
Yeah, you're not going to learn that just by reading in
No,
the
you're not
book.
going to learn that. And taste is a big deal. Taste and smell and sight. Most importantly, I think people discount this, but the smell of something and the taste of it at the same time equal a lasting memory, more so than just tasting it, or more so than just smelling it, and more so than just definitely more so than just seeing it. You end up with your brain imprints a whole lot better from smell than pretty much anything, right? So when you combine the smell and the taste with the sight reference, and you put all those things and you continue to do that, you really lock in what that thing is.
Yeah.
I think
that's heavy. That's cool though.
No, it is. It's one of those things that I think most people will discount, but people have a really good palate are the people who like continually taste things like they're, and they're really searching for it. And you could train your palate to do that. I mean, you can train your nose to do it. You can, people who do wine classes, sommelier certifications, they get vials of things that smell like things, so they can smell that and then smell a wine and go, oh yeah, that definitely is in there. Right. And then you can start to make these correlations between these things, right? Like, the smell of green grass, or, bell pepper, or, or mustard seed, or any of those things that you can smell, like plum and cherry and rose, and all these things you're going to find in wine or chocolate or coffee.
Yeah.
Or, any of these things like right now, it's a big deal. Like, 20 years ago, if I told you that, coffee was going to be as diverse and as sort of, I guess, a codified like wine is, like, you'd looking and like, yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, you're stupid. There's one kind of coffee. It's black. Yeah. And then you put some cream in it and some sugar. Now, man, I mean, knowing where the bean came from, how high up on the mountain it was, how low on the mountain it was, what time of year it was harvested, how long it dried, what flavor profiles come from the terroir that's underneath it, so the earth contributes, right?
Right, definitely.
The beans taste of what they grew in. Mm-hmm. And if you have terrible soil, then you have terrible beans. If you have great soil, have great beans. If you stress it at certain times in its growth cycle, you're going to have better quality at the end. Yeah, so all of these things contribute, and you can literally taste them in everything we eat, and it doesn't matter what it is that we eat. You can taste it. I mean, we put out a locally sourced beef burger, and every once in a while when we're out and about and we get something, and I'll grab something, it's like it's really hard for me to order away from a burger at a menu somewhere, because I want to compare it,
right?
And at the same time I'm just like, wow, but I'm not going to get a chance to actually taste that again for a little bit unless I do it. So I always gravitate towards the things I can't get. But, it's like when I have to, when it's like, I don't see anything here that I really want, and we gravitate towards that burger or whatever, and we have that burger, and it's just like, God, it falls flat. It's like, or it's like, wow, they really bought a really quality product. Right. Or you go, wow, they're really masking a really terrible product by putting a whole bunch of seasoning in the meat and mixing it in, and then making a patty and then seasoning the crap out of it.
Cover it in sauce.
I cover it in sauce. I cover it in Worcestershire or whatever it is, right? It's like when you're doing that, like, then you're losing the fact that there's meat there even. And, so I take some pride in that, and I think the Smiths do too, is that, they put out a quality product, and it all shows. But that all comes back down to, like, consuming things and going, this is good, that's not, I mean, we chose them because we were able to buy the product, sample a product over and over and over again over time. Because, while I was living in Austin, we came here to visit family, and you go to a farmer's market and you see this little farmer's market go from the parking lot in the back of a church to a building, and to see that the vendors have gone from, 3 to 10 hodgepodge vendors, one or two of them selling one or two things, I mean, you mentioned Larry Gerald, he's one of the original vendors there, but you see him go from working out of the back of his truck to working off of a booth and bringing more stuff and building a building out back, and, doing all that stuff. And you go, wow, this whole town's really growing and there's some good stuff there. But being able to come back and see the growth and see what's coming to the market, and then over time sample products and see if the quality is improving or lessening. And all we've seen is everything keeps moving up. Ruston's starting to develop its own little food identity. It's not ever gonna surpass. It's not ever gonna surpass hey, New Orleans is a food culture. Like that's a food culture. It's been a food culture for a century, and will continue to be. But Ruston has an opportunity with the volume of growers we have, and people who are moving back into town. I mean, there was a great article that somebody just posted. I think it was from the Chamber or the Convention and Visitors Bureau about what are the towns, which towns are booming, or which parishes or which counties are booming. Across the United States, and Lincoln Parish comes in hot on that. And the average age of the community here of people moving in is 27 years old. That's awesome, because those people are people who have been out and about. They've seen things, they've experienced new stuff, they've experienced great restaurants, they've experienced great food or entertainment and things like that, and they're coming back to live here. Why? It's like, well, because they see those little, I get a chance to talk to these people, and it's like, they see the same things we saw. It's getting there. We're close. And if we can be here to help make that or move that needle and make it go forward, then that's going to be great for us. I think a lot of people who grew up here discounted the fact that this is a great community for family. A lot of my friends that I knew in college couldn't wait to get out of here. They're all come back, or they never kind of left. They kind of stuck around and maybe changed their vision, as they started to work in the area and go, it's not so bad. I might have grown up here and I thought it was terrible, but it's like I travel now and I see other places and I'm like, maybe I could live there, or maybe I couldn't live there, but my little hometown isn't so bad. And if we just had this, man, it would be even better. And I think that's where we're at right now. Is like, I think everybody's like, if only we had this, or wow, do I know somebody who could bring that? And I think that's where we're at. We've got a great mayor doing that. You know what I mean? I'm here because he brought the right people into his office who reached out, and we made some connections, and we started talking about this project that we got going downtown. And the project was not what we're currently doing. The project was actually a city project that they wanted to do. It was a public market space. They've been to St. Rock's, Little Rock, the shops at the Little Rock River Market, places like that, food hall kind of concepts. And they're like, hey, we have this great old building and we'd love to do this. And, unbeknownst to them, when they asked for an opinion and threw out some drawings, it's like, I still have this architectural bend in my head. I still build stuff. I still draw. I still look at space differently than everybody else. And they threw a plan out, and I kind of threw some trace paper on top. And they're like, "What are you doing with trace paper?" And I'm like, "It's kind of what I do." So, we kind of picked apart our
It's gonna make some changes.
No, it's like your plan's okay, but it's like if you really want to take advantage of this thing, you really need to rethink the way people will move through the space. It's about flow through space, and you're like, you go, God, it's like I really paid attention in some avenues, not only from architecture, but I've worked in some phenomenal places over my career, from culinary school, which was great, and they had some fabulous facilities, but my internships were great. I worked down the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach, which is a 5-star 5-diamond property, and they were doing tons of reno there. I went to work for Stephen Piles in Dallas after that, and these are high-end restaurants with huge volumes and great layouts and the whole 9 yards. And
what kind of roles are you filling in these?
In these spaces, they're intern and beginner roles. So when I was at the Breakers, I was an intern, but I got to do so much fun stuff there. I mean, it's like the 13 working kitchens in that hotel, and
wow,
and I got to experience them all. I was fortunate to be in a space where the executive chef of the hotel, Matthias Raditz, who has unfortunately passed away at ALS, died shortly, like 5 years after I got to meet him and get to know him. He was an adamant soul. He was like, my job as a chef is to teach the next generation how to do it right. And he took that to heart. He created an international internship program at the Breakers. So there were people from all over the world working there who were getting an international culinary certificate. And his job was to teach them skills, all the skills that you would learn if you went to culinary school or you went through an apprentice program in France or Austria or any of those places, and you would get the same certification, the same credit, and it would be valued just like any graduate, any graduate from any culinary school. Probably more so because these people were real world, much like Neki was. And I think he saw the value in Neki and kind of went there and gravitated towards started grabbing students. And his pitch to us was, and I had no intention of going. I was at culinary school for 2 days when I interviewed with this guy. I was like, I want to go in there and interview with the chef because I want to know what it's like. I'm going there for experience. Mm-hmm. And the guy talks me into going. Because I'm like, wow, like you're talking about just continuing what I'm doing here and bringing it down there. So basically, he was like, I'm going to run, you get 6 months with me. He was like, you got to get 700 hours. You're going to get that really fast. And I'm going to run you through every kitchen I can. And I promise you're going to learn a lot from me. You're going to learn a lot from my people. And basically that's what he did. So, I mean, like I went there, I worked, when I left my first year, my first 6 months at culinary school was an in-house. Then you go to 6 months of internship, you come back and then you go back out and that's generally your first job.
Let me ask one question. So was that, did he hand select you? Did you?
Oh yeah, no, it's definitive about it. Like he came to school, he interviewed people, and he only took who he thought were going to succeed.
Yeah.
He didn't want unsure people, but I mean, I talked to this guy for 1 day for 1 hour, in person, and then I went to a meeting he held about the Breakers Hotel at school because the time I had my meeting with him, it was basically, hey, I'm going to interview. And whenever you had an interview, the school would be like, okay, we need to cut your time out. So they pull you from your kitchen. Unfortunately for me, I was in a theory kitchen and he was in the hotel that I was in. So it was just like, hey, you can go and interview. So, I just went up in whites and I sat down in a dining room with him and he asked a bunch of questions. And basically he was like, so South Louisiana, huh? He's like, yeah, you're coming to work for me. And he was like, because if you move from South Louisiana to here because of this, then I know you came here, with a purpose.
Right. Yeah. You're driven to do so.
You're not here to play around. If you moved yourself, 28 hours from home, you're here, you're serious.
For sure.
And the fact is that I left there and I was 25 years old. I wasn't fresh out of college like most of the kids he was seeing coming out of Florida schools.
A little more maturity.
Yeah, I mean, as definitely more mature and definitely more focused at what I was going to do for a career. Up until that point where I decided culinary school was where I was going to go. I took my job seriously, but I didn't take it seriously enough. Looking back, I mean, there's so much more there's so many more things that I could have done personally to educate myself about what I was doing at the time that would have made my job easier, better. It would have made everybody else's job easier too, because we'd have all known what we were doing. But at the end of the day, you can look back at that all you want, but once you commit to going to that school and you go, and I want to learn, I don't care what you're going to do. If you are committed to it, you're going to get the most out of whatever program you go to. I mean, I know kids who went to what most people would consider terrible culinary programs, terrible, welding schools, terrible whatever, right? But these people went, these souls decided, this is what I'm going to do and I want to be good at it. And they go and they extract it. They get what they need from it and then they go. And I think that's something that, people get pushed into. Go to school, go do this, you need to do. And it's like, at 18 or 19, do you really know what you're doing? I mean, that whole youth is wasted on the young is an actual statement of fact. It's not, it's an idiom, but it's a statement of fact. I mean, people say it's like, man, if only I knew what I, knew then what I know now. And but that's the way life works. You don't learn, what you don't know until you know it.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of things that, I committed to going there. That was a relationship that he saw. He knew I was a little bit older than his average intern. I could come in there and hold my own, or he felt like I could, because at that point I had no idea I could hold my own in that environment. But I interviewed, and I spent an hour with the dude. Went to his talk about what the Breakers is and who they are and how they got to where they were. Because when he took over, it was a one star, one diamond property. It had lost its fifth mobile star 10 years earlier, and the new ownership was like, we're gonna pour money into this, and we're gonna make this great again. We're gonna make this a place that everybody wants to come. It used to be the pride of the New York City scene to come down to the Breakers in the winter, because like, we want to attain that again.
Right.
And so they hired these guys to do it, and European chefs and folks who understood that concept of perfection, and they did it. And not only did they do it, but they pass it on. So they agree to teach. And it's basically the same concept of teaching that I experienced at Neki. It's like, we're going to put you in a kitchen with a chef whose job it is to make sure that you can actually do this job before you go to the next kitchen.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, I mean, I started out in circle dining, show up at 2 a.m. because you got breakfast at 6. And it's breakfast for the whole hotel. It's guests staying in their rooms. It's guests coming down to dine. It's it's everything. So circle dining is where the day starts. All the fruit prep, everything happens right there in the morning. So you go in at 2 a.m. and you're cooking hundreds of pounds of bacon and hundreds of pounds of sausage. And you got this Austrian guy, looking over your shoulder, who's like, did you burn it yet? What are you doing? How many pans did you burn? How much more do we need to make? And just like constantly, like I'm, driving. And, I made it through my first day. Didn't burn any bacon, didn't burn any sausage, didn't do that. So, this guy's like, oh, you're a smart guy. Didn't burn any bacon. You're just like, oh, God, give me a break, dude. Can't catch any slack from this guy. But,
Yeah.
I went in that kitchen. It was basically like it's trial by fire. I'm going to bring out a bunch of speed racks. I need all of this cooked by 3:45.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, chef, go,
Right.
And it's like turn on the burners and see what happens. And you survive. And I did that for 3 weeks. And then 3 weeks comes up and, Chef Raddick shows up and he goes, well, Herman, he's like, this is, it's like, you tell me, is he ready to move? And Herman's like, well, I mean, I can keep him. Can he move to banquets? And he can work nights there and he can work days with me. And I'm like, dude, I work nights here. Like, I come in at 2 a.m. He was like, no, he's like, seriously, he's like, you should go. So I went from there. I went from one kitchen. I went over to a seafood bar where my internship coordinator was. And my internship coordinator was there for about a week. And then he actually got a job in Boston and left. And the new coordinator comes in. It turns out it's Tori McPhail, who's now the executive chef. Commander's Palace in New Orleans.
Okay.
So yeah, Tori was a Commander's Palace guy. Came up in the God, I'm gonna forget Jamie's last name, but Chef Jamie, who passed away, sent Tori to learn more at the Breakers. He's like, you've learned everything you can from me. I need you to go somewhere else. And so he sent Tori to Breakers. Tori came out there to be a sous chef and run a kitchen and take his own little bin and put it in there. And fortunately, I was able to work with him for a little bit, and seafood bar, and then the banquets, and then the Flagler Steakhouse, and then over back into butcher shop, and and then pastry, and then right as I was wrapping up my 700 hours in my 6 months, I didn't get to do it, which is the only thing that I wish I had an opportunity to do, was to work in their fine dining room. I was run by a 24-year-old Norwegian chef named Torleif, and dude was phenomenal. I mean, 24 years old, and he was just a phenom. Like, dude cranked out some unbelievable stuff. I mean, his crew was tight. I mean, he had 8 core people and then 5 or 6 interns, and he had a crew of stewards that ran with him, and he ran a ship of about, like, his little crew was probably 30 strong, 40 strong, and they didn't miss a beat, man.
Wow.
I mean, it was nuts to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. But you see, and a lot of it's just visual. Like, you see things, and you can learn from watching them. You can learn the little things, and it's like, it's like I look at myself now and I'm just like, I just left a job where details are important everywhere across the board, from how you build a cup of coffee, that's how you set the stations up, to, how do I put the water in the cooler so that people will get more water and less soda? How do I encourage them to choose less meat, more veggies on a buffet?
Yeah.
How do I do that? How do you accomplish that? It's like to think about every little detail of, if I'm a person and I have these choices, how do I make these choices? And to get in somebody else's head and to get in their shoes is not that hard once you actually understand the dynamics of how people think. But you take all those life experiences, being in the breakers and seeing how they set something up, what they did with that over there, how did they accomplish that? You know, it's like, man, we fed 3,500 people in this room 3 hours ago, and we're flipping it to feed a different 3,500 people in a completely different setup. And it happens without a flaw, you know. It's
well,
like,
I can imagine that you probably felt confident in what you were learning because you saw how efficient and how good everything was flowing, and you probably knew you were a part of something good.
I think that's a valid point too. It's like, you know, when you know you're contributing to that system, it's a whole lot better overall. I think and I think that's just in general. It's not just
for sure.
You know, I think that's anybody. Like, if you don't feel like you're contributing to the greater good of your work environment, I think you're less likely to reach to the next level, to contribute a little bit more. You know, and that's pretty. I think that's more the norm, unfortunately, than the exception. I think the exception is the person who feels like, hey, I'm contributing, I'm getting a lot from here, and I feel like I'm part of something bigger than I am, and I'm willing to step back from myself a little bit in order to be a bigger part of something greater than me.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
but it sounds like maybe you had the opportunity, but you did take on that attitude from the minute you stepped into a kitchen almost.
I made a conscious decision to go into culinary school a blank slate. Like, you know, I had been working in a kitchen. I kind of felt like maybe I have some, like, after going to that meeting in Memphis with Chef Michelle, and you know, where it was an open meeting. Like, they invited a bunch of people there, so there were probably 40 people in that meeting who were there to talk to Chef Michelle about what the school was, and these were people who were thinking about going there. So I wasn't there by myself.
Right.
You know, I was invited to go to that group. And I think the fact that I had some experience said, maybe we should talk to this guy a little bit closer. So I noticed that there were a couple other people who were in the kitchen floating around, hanging out, who weren't part of the kitchen there. They were dressed in street clothes. So obviously there were kids that got there before I did. They'd met Jose, they'd met Michelle, and they'd been taken around the kitchen and shown some other people. Because, you know, as soon as they showed me around, they're like, hey, you know, if you want to ask somebody questions, you know, pick a station, go ask questions, they'll answer, you know, they're here to help you decide, you know, if this is something you want to do. So I saw other kids doing that. So there are probably about 5 or 6 of us out of that group of 40 who I think got a little extra special care because we may have had experience, and I think that we maybe the questioning was better. Like, you know, it's like,
I didn't. You showed a general interest.
Yeah, we showed a general interest in trying to get into culinary school. I mean, your application was an essay about like why you want to be there. You know, it's like, and I think when you read that, you go, okay, yeah, this person really wants to be here, or this person's just fishing. They're looking for something to do after high school.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, the group of kids I was in culinary school with, I mean, our average age of our group was like 26. We had like 4 people who were second career people who were in their 40s, who retired early, you know, big giant, you know, I mean, GTE, Boeing, you know, like we had these guys who were like big shots, you know, who, you know, they kind of left their careers to go and do something else. So we had these people who were senior level people, and I think we had like maybe 6 out of 42 kids were under the age of 21 or, you know, or just 21, you know, so we had a really good group. I mean, the core of our group was in that like 24 to 28 range.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Like, hey, we've been to college, been out there, didn't want to do what I wanted to do. And here I am, this is what I want to do.
For sure.
And so, you know, when I look back and I look at my, you know, I look through Facebook and I see the you know, I see my friends, in there, I see a lot of people who are still cooking or are in the hospitality business. You know, maybe not cooking, but are in the hospitality business, which is awesome to see. You know, but you can experience, you know, the experience is different than when you got a bunch of 18-year-olds.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, you got to deal with a bunch of, you know, kids to generalize it. You know, it's a whole lot easier to work with people your own age or around the same mindset, I guess.
I think have the same mindset.
Yeah, yeah. They've failed with some and figured out what they didn't want to do and that kind of deal.
Yeah, true enough. You know, it's to that point, it's like, I went there doing that thing. Like I'm going there. I know nothing. These people know everything. I don't know anything. And you show up and you realize, wait a second, I do know a lot. I do have an opportunity here to not waste my time learning that so I can learn that. Right. So if I can prove to you I have basic knife skills, the chef instructor is not going to come over and say, hey, you got some pretty good knife skills. Why don't you keep working on that? He's going to be like, hey, you got some pretty good knife skills. Why don't you put that down? Let Joe over there who has no knife skills do this. And I'm going to teach you how to do this over here. And then you can master that. So, they pick and choose. They look around. And I mean, there is a day one, everybody grabs a knife, you cut a bunch of stuff, you answer a bunch of questions, and they go, okay, you're an A, you're a B, and you're a C. Mm-hmm. And in your BACA 7, you have a couple of A's, you have a couple of B's, and a couple of C's. So there's a mix of people. So you have some A's who might be able to help the C's, and you have some B's in the middle ground who, if they're good, they're going to be paying attention to the C's and the A's. They're going to be like, hey, don't do that, or they're going to be like, ooh, I don't want to do that. and they're going to pay attention to the A's. And it helps the chef instructor because you have some A's who can say, hey, man, I got a faster way to do that. Here, let me show you how I learned.
Yeah.
Hey, that's not the way he was asking you to do that. Like, if you really did that. So, fortunately for me, I felt like I was an A going in. I had already had knife skills. I knew some basics about kitchen speed and timing. I knew about expediting. I knew about all these things that happen in a kitchen that people spend a lot of time learning. I already had those things. So instead of spending time learning knife skills, basic knife skills, chef's like, hey, you let them do the knife skills. You come over here. I'll teach you how to make sauces. I'll teach you how to make stocks.
Yeah.
Or I'll teach you how to do the stocks from the get-go. Now, everybody gets to do it, but the person who has the skills to do that and something else. So let me put you on stocks right now, because once stocks start, you're going to have a whole lot of free time to do something else.
Yeah.
These people over here, I put them on stocks. They may not. They may have to watch that stock and really pay attention to it, because they're not going to have that timing that says, oh, check the stock. Oh, check the stock. So, you get multiple tasks, and that's training. It's going, I'm going to give you 3 things to work on while Joe over there learns how to do one thing. Once Joe learns that he's got to do one thing and something else, let's play the game. And what you see is that in a very short amount of time, everybody kind of steps up. Everybody goes away for first internship. And if you had a decent internship, you're coming back and your level is really peaked out. Like, you've really hit this mark. I was fortunate that I came back. I worked with a lot of the same people I worked with in the previous year. A lot of them were just flipped from my sister block. So you start in groups of 14, you broken up into 7s, and then you trade off. You work your first month, the whole group moves over to month 2. Month 3 guys move to month 1 setup kind of scenario. Okay, so you get this A, B, and C. C moves to A moves to B, B moves to C, and you rode around. Once everybody's rotated, now you're a first year second mod student, and you move to the next 3 months. The same thing happens. You and your sister block start in A or B or C, and then you transfer around until everybody works the circuit. And then after you're done with those 2 mods, you go out on internship and you come back. So you get that training, you get that experience, you get that timing, you get to do all that stuff, and it's a lot of fun to be in an environment where you're learning, but you're also contributing. So what we were talking about earlier, it's that you get to do that. And that's a lot of fun.
So how many internships did you have?
2 internships. Okay. So in order to graduate with an applied occupational sciences degree in culinary arts from NECI, you got to do 2 700-hour internships. By comparison, at the time, CIA was 1 600-hour internship. I think it was 1 600-hour internship total. So we were in culinary school. I started in June. In December or in January, I started an internship. I came back to school in June. In January, I was leaving for another internship. Yeah. And then at that point, once you finish your 700 hours and you're codified and everybody signed off on it, you're done. You actually can officially graduate. So I got done with my 700 hours working in Dallas for Stephen Piles at Star Canyon and Aquanox. and sent in all my paperwork, graduated.
Can you compare internships, I guess?
Yeah, so one's in a hotel where you have all of this stuff going on. So banquets are huge. You've got fine dining. You've got breakfast going. You've got a steakhouse. You've got country club venues. You've got a museum that they're running. So like you have this exposure to all kinds of points of service. And I mean, and then on the low end of that, you have the reef bar out on the beach that you're grilling hot dogs. Like I literally spent a week because the reef bar chef was on vacation. Like they were like, "Hey, can you grill a hot dog?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think I can grill a hot dog."
Professional.
They're like, "Yeah, exactly." It's like, "Yeah, I think I can grill a hot dog." They're like, "It's on the beach," and I'm like, "That's gonna be terrible for me to grill hot dogs on the beach," and. But yeah, they send you out there and you go and you make, Cuban sandwiches and grill hot dogs for a bunch of kids who are out there on that end of the beach because they're not eating the stuff that you're serving inside.
Right.
They're not eating at the beach club because the beach club is all, it's all fish and seafood and the whole 9 yards. And these kids are out there with their parents and they're, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And actually they're on the beach. They're on the beach over there near the reef bar because their parents are inside having vacation and somebody else is managing their kids because they have that kind of money.
Right.
And, so the nannies, the au pairs, all this, because a lot of Europeans are there, all these people are there and they're just watching the kids. They're just like, they kick back in their chair and they're like, "Hey, not my brats.
I'm on vacation too."
This is kind of my vacation. I just got to keep them in the field of play.
Yeah.
They're just like, as long as they don't get past me, we're good. They don't drown. They get past me. I still have a job. They get fed. We're good, right? But you get, you have this experience where everything is, over the top. And then I go to Dallas, and my internship starts out with them realizing that, like, where I got hired by the executive chef at Aquanox, Mark Schmidt. I get there. I'm checking in 3 days early, trying to meet with Mark, and I get the runaround at the front door, and I'm like, "Listen, what's going on?" And they're like, "Mark doesn't work here anymore." And I'm like, "Okay, I have an internship contract." I'm like, "So who's in charge?" And they're like, "Oh, Lynn's in charge." And I'm like, "Lynn who?" And they're like, "Oh, Chef Lynn Satoff. Like, let me go get her." "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Let me go find her." And it's like, so we spend like 45 minutes trying to just get me to talk to whoever's in charge so I can actually go, "Here's my contract. Like, I need to know what's going on."
Right.
Nobody called me and told me Mark was fired, and apparently got fired a month before. He never called me and said, "Hey man, I got fired."
Right. Yeah.
So, my internship started out pretty rocky there, but, I get in to meet with Lynn. She's like, "Oh my God." She's like, "We already hired somebody for that spot," because we didn't know Mark had hired somebody. So she's like, "I don't have a spot." She's like, "I'm going to call Matt Dunn over at Star Canyon and see if he's got some place for you." So she calls a sister restaurant, and so she calls this guy Matt Dunn, who's from Algiers. So, I meet him, and immediately I throw out the heavy coon ass at him, and I'm like, and he's like, "Where you from?" I'm like, "Down to Bayou, dude." And he's like, let me see what I can do for you. And he puts me in the kitchen. He's like, "I don't have anything of worth for you to do." He's like, "I got potatoes to peel, onions to cut. I'm going to start making some phone calls and find you a job." He was like, "I know people everywhere in this town. Let me find you a job." And I'd chosen to go there because I had a friend who went there who had a great internship. And I'm like, this sounds like the kind of place I could go and I could learn something. So that's why I chose to go there. But I spent like 4 days in the kitchen, just literally peeling potatoes and doing that stuff. And I was done with my task list just unbelievably early. Matt was like, "Hey dude, like, here's your list. Go do it. Go do your list. Here's your list." And he'd give me this list. And, so I would go and get all my stuff. I get all my hardware, get all my prep, get all my raw meats. And I would just like come over, set up my station. I'd have pots and pans going. I'd be chopping stuff. I'd have pots and pans behind me. I'd have, stuff chilling out here. I'd have stuff in the oven, and like 2-3 hours in, I'm like, "I'm done. Hey, Matt, what else can I do?" He'd be like, "Dude, well, I don't know." It was like, start looking at other people's list. "Man, I'm sorry. I don't have anything. I don't have a position on my line. I don't have a catering. I don't have this. So it was just like, I was just biding time. And, fortunately for me, on that last day when he was just like, "Hey man," he was like, just bear with me for this last day in the kitchen. So I got done with a bunch of stuff, and I'm sitting there with nothing to do. I mean, I've done my stuff. I helped this dude next to me cut pico. I'm about to go and see the ladies who are all Spanish speaking, making masa, to figure out if there's something I can help them with.
Yeah.
Which there's nothing you can help them with because they don't want you.
They don't want your help. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, they're just like, yeah, dude, gringo, go away. You know, it's like it's you know, they're very, they know what they're doing. They do it well, and they have this thing. And I don't care if you ask them to make 20 tortillas or 20,000 tortillas, it's gonna take them 8 hours. They get 8 hours a day, and they sandwich all the tortilla production and all the masa production into 8 hours. And it doesn't matter how much of it they have to do or how little they have to do, it takes 8 hours.
That's funny.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the way they work. I'm not kidding. There are days where they had to come in and make like a 20-pound batch of masa to 8 hours. The next day, they would make 400-pound batches of masa, and they would do it in 8 hours. And you're just like, how is it that everything takes you guys 8 hours?
Yeah.
You know,
If you weren't so good at this, I'd get mad at you.
Yeah, you know? Well, no, I mean, but nobody was going to do their job. Nobody was going to do it as good as they did it, or with as much attention to detail as the quality of product coming out as they did. So again, it didn't matter if they're making 20 or if they're making 20,000. Every one of them was going to be really good.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the deal. But I happened to be sitting there in the kitchen looking for stuff to do. I was bored to tears, hoping somebody would call out sick so I could get on the line and actually get on the line and cook, you know, for somebody who was going to buy something. And, because I'd been shadowing the line when they, you know, I've been watching these guys prep. I'm watching them set up their station. Every chance I got, I went out on the line. I looked at their station. I took notes. You know, this is pre-cell phone days, so you know, was no click, take a picture. I got your station. I'm out. You know, there was none of that. So there's nobody sharing your book. Like, I mean, like I share recipe books. Like it's like, here's your recipe book for your station. Here's your recipe book for your station. Here's this. You know, at Google, it's just like, here, you take your stuff. You know, ROB, you know, my admin, I'll be like, hey, you got recipes for that? You know, it's like, and she always hated them. I'm like, just find us a recipe. Like, just Google it, you know, like we're at Google it. You know, but, you know, back then you could go out there, you could take some notes, you draw a little station setup, you see what they're doing, you look at the plates, you get a menu. You'd be like, oh, crap, what's that look like? And, you know, you sit out there for long enough and you see them prepping for it. And you know that, oh, that goes on this, that's this. You can look at them and you read it and go, oh, okay, that goes on that plate, this goes on that plate. And then pretty soon you start to go out there in the evenings to just help. You know, they're calling back going, I need more potatoes. So you run back out there, grab a bucket of potatoes to bring it to somebody's station. And you're out there, you see plates on the line and you're just like, oh, that's a rock shrimp. Awesome. Now I know what it looks like. Right?
Yeah.
So if I'm paying attention, that dude slips. You know, he didn't show up. He has to call out or whatever.
I got it.
Maybe I got it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll give me a shot at going to his station. You know, so you play that game. I mean, it's a dog eat dog world on that line, right?
I think it's awesome that like you were so driven, like you were put in a really shitty spot, and you're still like, I'm gonna kill this. Like I'm gonna do.
Well, I mean, for me, I had no choice.
Can.
You know, I'd moved myself there. I didn't have a whole lot of money. I wasn't being paid well to start with.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, unfortunately, the life coming out of culinary school is pretty dire. I mean, you're not gonna make a lot of money. You're gonna work a lot of really terrible jobs, really a lot of terrible hours. And hopefully, you might actually be able to pay your rent, and you know, and hopefully in 6 or 7 months or a year, whenever your student loans come around, you'll be able to pay those, you know, and still afford to be able to live and, you know, and all that. Fortunately, you work in a food business and you'd feed yourself, you know, on scraps and family meal. And, you know, but, you know, you get in that situation. Unfortunately for me, that last day where, you know, Matt was like, that's all I have for you. I'm going to have to figure something else out for you. Fortunately for me, Stephen Piles and Mark Kiffin showed up in the kitchen to start demo work for New Taste from Texas TV show that was going to start shooting in 2 days. And Mark Kiffin was the corporate executive chef at Coyote Cafe in Santa Fe under Mark Miller. Mark Kiffin has a whole slew of Southwest Texas cuisine books that he co-authored with Mark Miller. Stephen has books that he authored, and he hired Mark Kiffin to help expand Star Canyon, Aquanox, and a concept that wasn't launched yet called Canyonita, because they had a new investor in the company and they were taking Star Canyon to Las Vegas. They're taking Aquanax to Las Vegas to the Venetian Hotel. This is all while I was there. And they were going to launch the first Canyonita restaurant, which is a taqueria and tequila bar concept. High-end tequilas, high-end tacos, so really craft done things, exotic corn, the whole 9 yards. So they were working on that concepts and stuff like that. So, but Steven had an obligation to do New Taste from Texas for KURA Studios. He had episodes to shoot for the TV show because he had a book that accompanied it, and he was obligated to it. So they were doing all the pre-production prep work. How do we want this to look? How was this? So I was there. My 8 hours were about to wind down. They were about to send me out. They walked in, and all I could see was Steven going, Mark, I need this way. So Mark would come over to the cutting board, and he would set up, and he would cut these things, and he would bring it back. And Steven would be like, okay, that's great. And then he'd be like, oh, but I need this over here. It's I need it this way. And so Mark would come back to the cutting board, and he'd start cutting. He'd be like, Mark, what are you doing? I need you over here. I need your opinion about this. And Mark finally just stopped and goes, I could either be over there, I could be over here. He was like, what do you want? He was like, I can't do both. I can either cut or I can be over there consulting. What do you want? He was like, I need both. And at that point, I was just like, hey, Mark, I can do that. And he was just like, I just leaned in. I was just like, hey, chef, you don't know me from Adam, but I can do what you're doing right there. I can cut that. And he was like, prove it. So we had radishes. He had been cutting radishes. So I mandolin a bunch of radishes, make a load of matchsticks. He goes, okay, great. He was like, here's what I need you to do. And he gave me a list of new stuff to cut. Started cutting away. 7 or 8 hours later, so I'm at this kitchen for 16 hours now. He turns around. He goes, hey, what's your name? And I'm like, my name's Desi, chef. And he's like, hey, I'm Mark. He goes, wait a second. He's like, you're the kid with the screwed up internship. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, dude, he's like, you got a job. Don't worry about it. He was like, you're working with me. I was like, okay. He was like, you got a car? I'm like, yeah. He was like, KURA Studios, find it, get an address, get some directions there, meet me there at 4 a.m. tomorrow. I'm like, okay.
Can I go to sleep?
Well, no, it's I'd gone in the early shift. So, my 16-hour day was I was getting to 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
Which at the breakers, there were nights where, I got off from banquets at 12 and I had to be in circle dining at 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
It's I went to the car, crashed for an hour and went right back inside, got a new wardrobe, showered inside, whatever in the locker room. So I took that and I ran with it. So an opportunity presents itself. If you're willing to try to jump in and do something, maybe it works out. It worked out. I got to spend my 6 months there, battling it out. And, I got to the end of my internship. Things were going south with sort of the Star Concepts group and their business partner, which is Carlson Restaurant Group. At the time, so one of the partners sold out. Steven was left behind with his other business partner, and then I think people started to go yeah, maybe it's time to sell out too. And I think everybody kind of had enough of how the thing was rolling out, and they just kind of parted ways. This was after I was gone, probably 6 months after I was gone. They officially just here, buy me out. You have it. It's yours. Take it. I'm gonna go away. I'm gonna chill out for a while and sit on the money I make off of this thing. But as I was wrapping up, it was really hard to figure out where I was going to fit in because we wrapped up a TV show. I was at Star Canyon on the line. I was at Aquanox on the line now. I was doing hot abs. I was doing sushi. I was running pastry when the pastry chef was gone. Doing a really good job of it there, in the pastry department. And just, they were like, hey, Margaret's got to go for 6 weeks on, FMLA leave. Can you take over? I'm like, sure. I'm like, it's my pastry experiences in culinary school, or I did a really good job, but, I'm like, it's completely different than being in that restaurant.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and, everything's wrapping up. Canyonita's really starting to fire up. There's people everywhere, and I can't get a straight answer of where I'm going. At some point, Mark goes, hey, you want to go to Vegas? I'm like, yeah, I'd love to go to Vegas. What's it pay there? And he was like, well, what are you concerned about the pay for? I'm like, I have to live there. I have to be able to afford to live in a place. I can't live on the street and get paid $10 an hour and hope that I can actually find a place to live with a bunch of yahoos, where I share a floor.
Right. I'm
like, I need to know, security wise, I got student loans that are going to start being due and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what to do, Mark. I'm like, I need you to tell me what we're going to do. And unfortunately, I never really got an answer. And right about then, Lynn Satoff is like, she just quit. Executive sous chef Michael Schmar quits. New guy comes in from a place called The Grape in Dallas, and I'm just like, I'm not staying here. I'm done. You know, it's like I can't do this. This is just the calamity. I'm not learning anymore. I'm treading water, and the uncertainty isn't good for me. And unfortunately, um, you know, Trenton Street, Dean is like, hey, I need out of this chaos, man. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I want to sell this place, but it's in shambles. Let's make this work. Can you, you know? So I said, look, I'm at a point where my dad is getting sick. It would be great to be closer to home so I can pick up and go if I have to. And I'm like, I'm here. I'll come and help. And Trenton Street at that point went through a full remodel. We changed the menu profile from focusing at burgers and sandwiches to putting some entrees in there, doing some things that I thought would work. And, you know, in retrospect, it's like, we should have really scrapped that thing and went right down the straight burger menu, burgers and sandwiches, and killed all the extraneous stuff and really made that thing fly. But we added things and it made it fun. It made it different. Change of attitude, you know, new bar scene upstairs and the whole 9 yards. I came back and, you know, when it was really ready to sell, I thought, hey, this is my opportunity. I can buy this place from Dean. Let me go see if I can find the financing. And I kind of walked into yeah, you don't have any credit, dude. You know, you're young, you haven't ever done anything. Like, you know, it's like you've worked all these great places, but you never run a business. I'm like, I ran that business. I'm like, you know, it's like I'm like, yeah. I'm the reason why the business is, you know, like we're making this thing happen, right? I'm like, I've come back and we're helping putting it back on its feet. So obviously I know something, right? You know, we took it from one set to a new state. You know, we're going to keep trying to get it better and better and better, you know, with my limited exposure at that point. And, you know, retrospect, best thing that happened, because, you know, you go out in the world and you realize now it's like, wow, I'm getting a whole lot more experience. So we got Trenton Street remodeled, then got it sold. I worked for the new owners for a while. That didn't work out. I took the job at Squire Creek. I opened Squire Creek for the Davisons.
Okay, I do recall that now. Yeah, man, that's wild. That's a weird.
I spent about 6 months there working for Rand and Nancy Kilgore and the Davisons. So I worked under Rand and Nancy Kilgore as the food and beverage directors, and it was 6 months, and I was out of my depth. Again, you go back to those things. It's like right now that job would be such a cakewalk. With the experience I have,
right,
it would be a no-brainer. There's nothing that you could throw at me in that job today that didn't completely unravel me then.
Yeah.
The things that unraveled me then are baby compared to some of the issues that I've dealt with over the last 20 years. You know, like you don't think about it though, but you know, I decided to go out in the corporate dining. I took a job out at CenturyTel because one of my vendors was like, go see it. Like, I don't want to work in a cafe. I don't want to work in a cafeteria. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
He was like, go see this place before you say you don't want to work in this place. So I did, and the place is unbelievable. I mean, CenturyTel's cafe was unbelievable. CenturyLink now for everybody.
But it's the same building?
Same building, same everything. But they've spent a lot of money in there. I mean, you know, we had a pizza oven on one side. You know, we had a giant back kitchen with huge amounts of production space. Really phenomenal equipment, more equipment than you needed to do the job, which is
you were
never
running the kitchen.
So yeah, I was hired as executive chef.
Yeah,
worked for a small food service contract company called Valley Services. It was the first time I was experiencing contract food service too. So this was like, you know, there's an agreement between a provider who runs the dining operations and a client, and the client agrees. There's all kinds of ways these contracts are structured, but predominantly they're subsidied or they're cost plus, or there's a management fee involved with some penalties for overshooting a budget, or some savings or some bonuses for coming in under budget. So they're structured in all kinds of ways. The structure at CenturyTel was a sort of cost plus operation with a budget number that hit. So you created a budget for the year with the company and with with your client, and internally you created a budget and you agreed to work under that budget. So if you exceeded the budget, you had to figure out where you're going to cut and scrimp and get down to, hey, we're going to make our budget at the end of the year. which means menu planning, right, purchasing, all of these things contribute to it. And to be able to sit there and learn that, I had a really good instructor there. The guy who was the general manager of the facility, who was the director, Chuck Tippelman, and I think Chuck is still there actually, if I'm not mistaken. But since I've been back, I haven't reached out. I need to do that. But Chuck was a good teacher. Taught me a lot about the systems and how the information gets transferred back and forth, and how to deal with it, and how to set menus in the POS systems, and all these things that have to happen on a daily basis behind the scenes, and how they interact. And
so was that like you were controlling the menu and
so we were controlling the menu, and there's some inputs. I mean, there's some things that happen it's the South, man.
Yeah.
You're gonna serve chicken fried steak on this day. You're gonna serve fried chicken on Wednesday. You're gonna serve red beans and rice on Monday.
Fish on Fridays.
It's like, fish on Fridays, right? It's like there's some things that were consistent, but then the other piece of the puzzle were not. So, and again, it's youth going in there, and you go like, well, I got to really condense this down. So, you use the tools at hand that you have. So, you go, okay, well, we are going to make this, but we're going to buy that, and we're going to buy this, and we're going to make that, or we're going to buy this, and we're going to tweak it to make it ours. You used to use the system because you have this budget you have to adhere to. You have to spend X amount of dollars, or under X amount of dollars for every day or whatever, and you have to schedule accordingly to your labor schedules and adhere to them. And then you have corporate documents. It's like it's time cards and the whole nine, training and the whole nine yards, all the stuff about the corporate monotony that happens that you don't want to deal with happens. And, eventually you get to learn it. But anyway, Chuck got me promoted. There was a job opening over at JP Morgan Chase, same company, Valley Services, but operating 2 buildings. So as a director instead of an executive chef, which it was the chef director job. So I got promoted to chef director job, make more money, a little more financial security. I'm able to pay my bills.
Yeah.
I'm putting money in the bank, and right as I'm getting comfortable with Valley, Chase throws this thing out to bid, and it goes out to national bid. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what it's going to, I don't know. Who knows? But anyway, Aramark picked up the contract. It was awarded to Aramark, which is a no-brainer since Chase at the time owned 8% of Aramark. So should have been able to read those tea leaves and, and make that happen. But I was really concerned because, there's always these shady guys in these corporate scenarios. They're pitchmen, they're salesmen, and I had a bad feeling about it. And I was just like, I don't know. I want to meet these guys. So I did. These new Aramark guys, and they came in and they were a riot, man. They were like, listen, dude, budgets are budgets. You get them. You hit your targets. You're going to never hear from me, dude. You're going to do weekly reports, daily reports, all that other stuff. Yeah, just like everywhere else. But, man, you hit your numbers. I don't care how you run this thing. Make sure your training's up to date. Make sure your numbers are good. And you don't have to hear from me. This is yours. You take the keys. You drive. I was like, I like that concept.
Yeah.
Especially in a company that's worth, that's $13 billion in sales. You're like, yeah, okay, I can do that. And I went to work for Aramark. And fortunately for me, the guy I worked for, guy's name is Tim Ray. He was the district manager for the district I was in. He had all of Louisiana, Florida, Mississippi. I met some really phenomenal people who were really good at what they did. They managed contracts unbelievably well, and they did it really, really. They were crafty. They made things happen. They pulled rabbits out of their hat all the time. And I got to learn from those guys. I got to meet those guys, and they taught me a lot. But Tim taught me numbers and how they apply in corporate contracts. How does this work? Here's your actual operational financing, right? Here's how this all works. And because I picked that up pretty quick, I found out Dad was an accountant, and you pay attention a little bit. You don't pay attention a lot because you don't want to do it.
For sure.
But you pay attention enough that you're dangerous with the information you have. But when you compile it with a business that you actually understand, and you make the relationships between the numbers and the business,
right,
all of a sudden, all those number things start to click, and you go like, wow, that's not so hard.
Yeah, you're feeling dangerous then.
Yeah, then you're really like, wow, I understand this, right? Yeah. So at that point, it's like, hey, you have an assistant food service director. These other guys, they don't. Would you be willing to do a little bit of traveling and going to opening accounts and doing this? I'm like, hell yeah, I want to do that. So, I got exposure. I got trained on some of the first inventory management system upgrades that happened to go from DOS based 3.5 inch floppy disk
Yeah.
base where you had to load up 15 of those things to count your inventory, right? To I'm surprised you
Yeah.
know that, you had to load these things in order to do that, back up your inventory and do all this, to a web-based version. So it was like one of the first. It was like one of the first. I don't know. In business services, we were one of like first 50 people to do that. So they're spread out all over the country. I don't even remember. And there's it's like 900 and something business accounts, operating at the time. So I was really fortunate to be in that group of people who got to pilot this thing and try it out and make it work. And I got good at it. And inventory control became a really big thing. Inventory control was a big thing at Necky. We generated some inventory spreadsheets. I didn't know how to use Excel. Couldn't do it to save my life. And I had a really good instructor at Necky, who was a programmer at IBM, because IBM is in Vermont.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And this guy taught us this stuff. So inventory was a thing there. It became a thing at CenturyTel where they were doing it on hand. They're doing by hand, like literally by hand. I got 2 of these, 2 times this equals this. And I'm just like, dude, spreadsheet that.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I'm like, let's put the spreadsheet in a database, So we were able to streamline our inventory at CenturyTel. I took that mindset over to JP Morgan Chase with Aramark, but then Aramark comes in and says, no, we have systems that do that. And they're antiquated, but they work. And they're in the same vein. You print a sheet, you count it, you go enter it, it adds it all up for you, and you're good. You just got to go and check pricing every once in a while, make sure it's correct. But they wanted to take that from that sort of system into a web-based system where you could do it on a handheld, you can do it wherever. You could run around with your laptop and knock it out. You can move things around with a point and click instead of a number sequence.
Gotcha.
All of those things. So
you
it was
got
really
you got
cool
to
to
experience both of that, like
this experience is all. So you understand the raw relationship between like counting on a sheet to like the end game of like going out in the inventory with the Palm. The time they're Palm. We got Palm pilots.
Yeah.
And you just go and you like load up my walk-in cooler, and it's, you click on walk-in cooler, it loads it up. You go back, you plug it in. Send data, it loads it in, you're done, come back and forth. But so it was really cool to see all of that happen. And now it's like you just go on your phone.
Right.
And you're like, and literally now they just go click ink, click link, click link. They go and shelf tag it. So now it's shelf tags, Mm-hmm. And that's just because the corporate dining facilities now are very streamlined. Purchasing is huge opportunity for pay for those people. So in buying in volume means you get discounts, but you also get rebates. And making sure you buy the right products is important. So that's one of those things. Yeah. So you get all of that in that aspect of it. But I was fortunate to work for these guys. Got a lot of background. Unfortunately for me, met my wife at JP Morgan Chase, and it's after about a year being there, Chase was in a merger with Bank One and all these things, so they were bringing new staff on, letting some staff go, changing the system. So she was onboarded on the Chase, and about a year later, they asked her to move, which is how we ended up in Texas. She moved to Texas. I told her I'd follow, so we got a transfer job, and I ended up in Texas with Aramark, and took a contract there. That contract washed out in about 6 months when the company was a technology company, filed for bankruptcy and closed up. Sat around for a couple of months, traveled back to the Southeast, and did some inventory control stuff, and then got a call one day and said, "Hey, we got a job for you at Cirrus Logic." So I was like, awesome. Came back to work as the director and executive chef at Cirrus Logic, which is actually, if you're holding any kind of technology that has sound or power management, man, these guys have a chip in it. They're amazing. That's my first experience of leaving the corporate dining world where everything is about the bottom line to a place where it's like, no. I need my people to be cool. I need my people to be happy. I need my people to experience. If you need money, tell us. We negotiated a contract. You gave us some numbers. A number BS, then it's BS. But tell me what the real number is so we can make this work. We can renegotiate the contract next year when it's time to renegotiate the contract. This year, we're going to hold to this. But if we blow through that, that's on you because you underbid it. We told you what our expectations were. So I show up, the contract was already bid. I meet some phenomenal people who understand their business extremely well and understand culture. And that's the first experience I have with culture and creating one, generating it, maintaining it, nurturing it, and coddling it, and changing it, and doing all this stuff. And Sirius was great at it. Their CEO is a young dude. I mean, he's a year older than I am, I think. Jason Rode. Jason was the way I get talent is to give them things that they can't get elsewhere. They're all engineers. They all have these wants, needs, desires. But when it comes down to it, is are we going to give them something different? Are we going to include them in this? And how does this work? And he saw through all of that. He was an engineer himself. And he just, like, he created this corporate environment where it's like, hey, we're going to do fun stuff. We're going to have a lot of fun as a group, as a company, as individuals. I want you guys to contribute. I want to contribute to you guys. I want us to have fun. But I want us to work hard so that we can have fun.
Yeah.
And you know, they had a small contract with Apple. Eventually won a bigger one. They were able to buy out their biggest competitor who had the contract before them. You know, they just grew exponentially, and we were negotiating space for. They knew they were moving downtown, and their CFO was like, "Look, we're moving downtown. Your contract's going to end, and we're not going to renew a contract. But, you know, there might be a space for you to work from if you're interested." And we played that game for about a year, and it didn't work out. At the end of the day, another guy got that contract because of relationship scenarios. And so I was back out in the world. I took about a year off, grew a backyard garden, kind of worked around Austin, did a lot of work around the house, like added a deck to the backyard, did some remodeling. You know, like just took my time to get back into the world. And when I did, I was fortunate in that I went and I applied for a technology job at a small technology company. Needs executive chef, 80 people fed twice a day plus special events. I'm like, sounds like a job I can do.
I can handle that.
And I can handle that. I just got done feeding 400 and something people a day, managing a giant budget. You know, it's like, well, I can do that. So I apply, get a phone call. Hey man, like, dude, you sure you want this job? I'm like, look, dude, I've been sitting around for a year. Yeah, I want this job. And I don't want the headache of dealing with 500 people. You know, it's like 80 people is perfect. I'm like, you know, okay, would you come in and talk to us and do a tasting? Sure, well, I'll do that. Absolutely. So I meet these guys. I go up to a place, an insurance company, Texas Mutual Insurance, go to the kitchen, do a demo. I'm like, you know, it's like, what am I doing here? This is not a technology company. Like, well, no, we're doing the demo here because this is one of our premier clients and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, cool, awesome. Do the demo. They're like, dude, that was great. Like, job's yours if you want it. I'm like, yeah, dude, I'll take it. You know, the money's right. The days of the week are right. The amount of food we produce is right. Like, yeah, let's go. He's like, well, there's 3 people who work over there. They're over there now. He was like, let's drive over and go and see the site. And I'm like, okay, cool. Drive over. Follow him, parking garage, get out, crosswalk, elevator. You know, he was like, I think you're really going to like this place. It's really cool. You know, it's like a great culture, great corporate vibe. You know, they've been here for a little bit. You know, we get to the top, elevator doors open, and there's a big giant sticker on the wall that says Google. And I'm just like, this is a Google account? They're like, yeah, that's a Google account. I'm like, oh, cool. I was like, this isn't a small technology company. I'm like, this is a small technology company. This is 80 people. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, but it's not a small technology company. Like, yeah, well, you know, we don't want people to get too overzealous and go like, oh my God, it might be Google.
Right.
You know? So, yeah, so I go in.
That's cool.
So I go in and, you know, we get a tour. And at that point in time, it's the 7th floor. And they have the 4th floor of the building and the 7th floor of the building. 4th floor of the building is all recruiters. And they got these little things they call micro kitchens. They call them MKs. So basically it's a coffee station with some snacks. And there's some bottled sodas and waters on the other side with some grab and go stuff in them. And some more snacks and another coffee machine. And on the 7th floor, it's the cafe, which is like 2 6-foot long steam well tables that you have in a buffet. I mean, they're really crappy. They're old. And I'm just like, this is Google, you know, like the space is really cool, but the the amenities are dead. He goes, well, let's go see this kitchen. So we walk in, and it's not a kitchen. It's like, I mean, it's literally, it's maybe a little bigger than this room.
Yeah.
And it's an L shape, right? So from wall to wall, it's about this way. Might be about 10 feet longer, and there's a little L shape that goes off to one side. And there's a hot box and a table and a couple of turbo chef ovens, which are the ovens that Subway uses to toast sandwiches and bake bread and stuff like that, right? So they're convection microwaves. And there's a couple of coolers. And I'm like, so where's the kitchen? And he was like, this is it, man. I'm like, well, where are we going to make food? Because the food that's out on the line is a whole lot different than what you can make in here. And he was like, well, Turbo Chef's help, but yeah, we make everything over at Texas Mutual. That's why we took you over there. And I'm like, okay, so I got to drive food from Texas Mutual here every day. Yeah, but we have a couple of vans and we got a driver. I'm like, okay, well, that's good. He's like, but you'd have to start over there, make everything for the day, and then drive over here. You know, the driver would load it up in the van. You drive over, come over here, get it off the van, get it upstairs. I'm like, God, this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's like, Jesus, like, I really want to do that. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it. You know, it's Google. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
And, so, yeah, I take the job and, you know, I'm told, yeah, man, it's awesome. It's 80 people, dude. This office is in coast mode. It's not going to have, nothing's changing. It's going to be a great job, you know, and here's the spin because they already know that that Google has already turned on the waterworks and they're already opening the valves to spend money in Austin, and that they're about to take this office from 80 people to about 600 people in about a year. And they already know this, and they're selling it as an 80-person job. So what I don't realize is that they've hired 2 people to do the job I was hired for, me and somebody else. And they're hoping one of us stays when we find out that there's 600.
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, we figured out, because I've been in this business long enough to meet these people who make these kinds of shady deals. And I knew what was going on as soon as I started reading some random emails that were coming across my desk. And I was just like, yeah, they're about to blow this place up, and we're about to get run over. I'm like, there's an architect, there's an 8th floor space plan. I'm like, there's a 2nd floor space plan, and nobody knows I can see all this stuff. Is the reality is they're sending emails back and forth, and I'm just going back into the history of the emails. You know,
you just
6 months
in.
before, and I'm just reading, and I'm just going like, yeah, you morons. Yeah, don't include me in emails that tell me what's happening. You know? It's like, I can see where there's a growth plan here. You know, I mean, like, I've been in this business long enough to read that.
Right.
And, so, you know, it's like I knew it was coming. I gave the person who was working with me, I was like, this was a girl who actually worked for Stephen Piles. She and I became really good friends because of it. You know, she worked for Stephen at a much later date and had a different take on it. But it was kind of like one of those things where you look at them and you go, hey, Liz, this is what's going to happen. She's just, no. I'm like, in the next probably 30 days, we're going to see a note come across that says we're going to increase the population. And she was like, no. Probably 2 days later, we got a note that said, hey, we just acquired this company down the road, and you guys need to get over there right now and start feeding them. I'm like, what do you mean, like right now? And they're like, yeah, right now. I'm like, it's Friday at 2:30. They're like, I know. Go get the vending machines turned over, and then make sure that Monday they have food. And I'm like, they're 8 miles down the road. I got 2 vans. They're both running all day. I'm like, how is this going to happen? They're like, oh, get ready because we got another building in the build. Like, they're building another building across town. So, like, this is happening. You got to get these 135 onboarded. They're going to leave their building and come onto your building, but it's going to take us 5 months. And while that's happening, we're building another building, and we're going to add 300 people to that one, and you have to feed those people too. And she's just like, oh my God, you were right. I'm like, I'm telling you, I know what's going down.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. So because of the advance, because of the warning, you know, we kind of know it, and we get to settle in and get what Google has to offer. You know, we got there and it was just give them what they want. It's 80 people. I don't want to hear anything out of these people. Just if they want brisket every day, give them brisket. If they want barbecue from Rudy's, go get it.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Right? Just make it happen.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear a word out of them. They have a crappy cafeteria. They have a crappy service. They're like it's just, it is what it is. Let's limp through here until we move to another space. But it's not what I do. So we figure out how to improve the space, add more features, get more service. You know, I mean, like I'm in my garage at home building random I'm taking carts that I find in the basement that they've just packed away, and I'm like, if I put a hard top on this one, I can do this, and we can take all our ambient food and we can put it on these things, and I can put desserts over there, and I can do this, and it's like, so I just start building crap, and I'm like, it's like just running it through my expense account and getting reimbursed for it, but it's it's $50 worth of plywood, and I got 2 new service bars, and I got $20 worth of like little cups, and all of a sudden we got a silverware station, instead of a box with a bunch of forks in it,
Right.
and so we just take it for what it's worth, and as you do that, and people take note, and you get this you get recognized for, hey, Austin's not a bad place, man. Like, they're really killing it. They're doing a lot with a little bit. You start to get more input, and you start to get more from it. But Google's where I sort of took away that mentality that local is important. Is how we get to here in Ruston is local's important. And it was Google's idea was just get them what they want. I don't care where it comes from. And then it's like, hey, get them organic, because that's what we do. We're Google. We do organic, right? And then pretty soon Google goes really quick. They go, maybe organic's not that, that the right way, because hell, they're cutting rainforest down. We're flying that stuff over. There's a fossil fuel impact. We had a carbon footprint to think about. So maybe we need to think about buying closer to home and being more seasonal and being more local and being like, go to the farmer, and instead of it coming on a truck from 6 states over, can it come from a pickup truck 6 cities over instead, or 6 towns over, and when you start to think about it that way, you go, wow, that's smart, because I have these little growers and farmers that I'm helping to grow their business. I've got better quality of food closer to home. I get it when I want it. I get to actually sell a story to somebody. I got this lady who, she and her husband and her 2 kids have this little farm, and they grow as much as they can on 20 something acres. And she's got a 9-month-old strapped to her back, and she's out in the field picking peas and, or turning rows or doing weeding or whatever. And it's like, and then Google says, hey, start doing some of these things, get them in the building, like invite the farmer in, do a farmer's market. But Google doesn't pay for it. Yeah, but my people don't pay for anything. I got no way to pay the farmer. Like, they're like, just buy all the product and just give it away or whatever. Because I'd been so good at the budget piece of the Aeromark world, they gave me a lot of money to spend at Google, and I was able not to spend it.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of money to spend when it came time to do these kinds of things. So I was able to go to the farmer and say, listen, I'm going to buy $800 worth of produce from you. They're like, what? Like, yeah, just give me $800 worth of produce. Like, what kind of produce you want? $800 worth. Make an assortment. Sell me what you can't sell. Sell me what you got too much of. And I did that with like 8 or 9 farmers, and we'd have these farmers markets, and we'd give Googlers a bag and say, you get to fill this bag and take it home. But in order to fill the bag, you got to talk to those people. You got to talk to them and figure out what their story is. You got to go over there and get to know them.
Make a connection.
Right? Make a connection. Like, get to know who these people are.
Yeah.
Ask them where they're going to be on Saturday at the farmers markets. Which farmers market they're going to be at. Ask them where they're going to be on Wednesday's farmers market. It's like, go see, Marisol and her little daughter Miel. Go find them on the weekend and spend some money with them out of your pocket.
Right.
And take that home and experience that. And at that point, you realize, like, Googlers are coming back and going, man, I had no idea what Faro was until I had it here. I went to this restaurant the other night. I was so impressed, man, because, like, I was the only person at my table that knew what that was. Man, I didn't realize you can make, candy from beets. I didn't realize you could do this, and all of a sudden, like, you have Googlers coming to you going, hey, man, I bought these things at the farmer's market. I don't know what they are, but can you help me, like, figure out what to do with these things? And be like, hey, those look just like these that we have over here,
Yeah.
So if you want, come in the kitchen with us and we'll show you what we do with them.
Yeah.
And you get to take money out of somebody else's pocket and give it to somebody over here and support a local business, and then educate a populace about why it's important to buy it from that local business. And you realize that circle gets really small, and that circle's really small, you have a much bigger impact on everybody. I mean, not only the quality of food that our Googlers leave the building to go seek,
Right,
but
right.
also the quality of person they want to deal with when
Right.
they go and seek that food. So
Yeah, I mean, you probably changed their whole mindset about
well,
going to the
it's like-
grocery store.
and I can say, well, I can say that, you say it that way, as that I changed their mindset, but somebody had changed mine first, because I mean, you remember I came from Trent Street where we bought bag French fries and we bought bag mushrooms and we bought bag onion rings and we bought bag cheese sticks, and you just throw them in the fryer and you get some sauce out of a can and you sell that, right? And that's good, right? It's good enough. It tasted great when you were 18, right? I mean, everybody had a
No
cheese
doubt.
stick, we had cheese fries at Trent Street, it's fries that we fried and we sprinkled cheese over the top during the microwave and threw some jalapenos on it, and everybody's like, oh my god, cheese fries were unbelievable. And now if I was to do the same thing, people would be like, oh, well, I really ate that. And that's just growth. It's like, the things that you eat when you're a kid and the things that are normal. I think about it this way. Trent Street, I think probably in a lot of ways was a little bit ahead of the curve. And maybe that's part of the reason why it kind of had this, like, a knock was that, we had, I don't know, probably 30 or 40 different microbrews or import beers, which now is like, all you have was 30.
Yeah.
Back then it's like find 30 microbrews in this part of the country. Back then, find 30 small breweries. It was pretty hard, but we were actually ahead of the curve. We had all those on tap. It's like we had, not on tap, but we had all of those in bottles. In our cooler, not only do we have Budweiser, Miller Lite, but man, we had a whole beer, quality beer, and then that kind of washed, like, I watched Ruston kind of be a sort of microcosm of the world, like at that point, like this idea that you could have these really upscale good things, went to like, yeah, but Chili's is awesome, right?
Yeah.
And not that we weren't doing what Chili's was doing. They were buying stuff and frying it and doing, but the fact is they were doing it in a corporate environment and they made it fun and cool and different. And, it's like, you get the commercials and the whole 9 yards,
Right.
and it's about environment and all this other stuff. But they're selling you like, man, it's convenience to have this crappy food. Like, and that's more important than anything else. And to an extent, because it's what we experience, is like, oh man, they're right.
Yeah.
And then,
this is good.
yeah, this is good, and then you get down the road and you realize, like, God, it's terrible, it's not really good. It's not the best thing ever. But you have to experience it in order to change a vision or change a mind. It's like at this point in my life, with the access that we have here, to growers, to people who are making really good food, who are growing really good animals, I feel like I don't have this hurdle to overcome anymore. I know what I want to do, and I know that it's valid because it's always been valid. Is to make real food with real ingredients is always better than the other thing, right? And that's never not been true. Even in the experience of like, wow, Chili's is great, right? Like, oh my God, have you been to Chili's? It's funny to say, but I mean, think about it. Chili's wasn't a thing until probably the mid 90s when it really took off. I mean, they've been around since the 80s or whatever, and all these chain restaurants. I mean, you think like Fuddruckers, man, as a burger joint. Wow, Fuddruckers started out, man, they were grinding burgers.
Yeah.
And they realized real fast, screw it, I could buy one for cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And it killed their model. They had something really good, and then they started to buy it.
Yeah.
And that became bad, right?
Wow. You definitely put in perspective on it. From
Right,
there.
but
Yeah.
I mean, and then Fuddruckers now is making a comeback. Why? They're grinding beef again. They're actually taking the time to do something that they used to do in the beginning. What they did to start with was never wrong. The concept of it was never bad. They just went away from it from a purely monetary standpoint.
Yeah.
From a purely consistency standpoint. I want to make the same burger every time. And sometimes you don't need to make the exact same burger every time. Sometimes a little nuanced difference is okay, right? I don't have to worry about making sure everything's perfect. Every place across the whole country is the same. Like, you don't have to do that. You have to do that if you're McDonald's. You don't have to do it if you're a casual restaurant. Even if you are a chain casual restaurant, some of those chain casual restaurants are really taking the benefit. Texas has got a bunch of them. When you think Rudy's Barbecue, like it's not Aaron Franklin barbecue, but it's not run of the mill second rate barbecue.
It's not
and
Podness.
they do no, it's not Podness, and it's but every little location in the chain of them does a really good job of executing. I think Torchy's Tacos in Texas, every Torchy's Tacos is consistently good, but nothing's coming out of a bag. It's because they take the time to train and teach and buy the right ingredients and do all those things correctly. I think Mighty Fine Burger, which hasn't made it beyond Austin, I don't believe. I mean, it may be up in Dallas and Houston. But Mighty Fine Burger is a spinoff. That's a Rudy's Barbecue scenario. I mean, you could go up there, watch them grind meat, patty it out. You could watch them crinkle cut French fries. They hopper potatoes into a big machine, and it cuts their crinkle cut fries. And then the next thing they do is clean the machine out, and they throw a bunch of big giant pickles in it. It cuts their crinkle cut pickles for their burgers. But you get to watch them. You get to watch them cut the tomatoes and wash the lettuce and do all those things. You get to see them build all the parts of a really simple griddle burger, right? But they're making everything, and you're just like, man, that's awesome, right?
Yeah,
that's
the
phenomenal.
experience
Like
of it.
you get to see that this didn't come out of a box. The fries came out of a box. They were whole potatoes that went into a machine that cut them into crinkle cut fries that then they take in buckets over to the fryer, and the guy fries them. And you're just like, man, this is awesome, right?
Yeah.
And the burger's good.
This is actually
it's
real.
fresh.
Yeah.
Everything about it is good stuff. And and then they take that model one time and they repeat it, and they repeat it again, and they repeat it again. And you're like, this is doable. You can scale this model of making really good food from really good ingredients. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to buy it in a bag. And so the opportunities are there, and that's again, it's validating that piece that making really good food from real ingredients has never been wrong. And for me, it's like, I don't want to go back to making anything from a bag or anything else. I spent the last, 12 years, 13 years of my life actually making real food for everybody and them enjoying it. And we've been able to integrate some real food from real growers, from real markets, and go, like, not only we're making really good food, but we're helping some people out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's where we're at in Ruston. I think there's an opportunity for that. I think there's a need for it. I think there's a want for it. And if we can put it and showcase it right in our downtown, and make it a highlight, I think that people from Monroe and Shreveport, El Dorado and Alexandria will take note, and they'll come here and they'll visit us because we're taking the time to do something a little bit better, right? And not just me, but the people that I can foster. I mean, part of what we're doing is to actually create an environment where I want other people to participate. We have other spots coming on that lot for other food trucks. I don't want to run all these food trucks.
Yeah.
That's why we rent a spot to Andrew at Bad Wolf Barbecue. Why do we rent that spot to Andrew at Bad Wolf Barbecue? Because Andrew makes really good barbecue.
Really good.
He does a really good job of it, right? But it's one of those things where, it's like, hey man, can we convince you to not use styrofoam? Yeah, we can do that. We make it easy for him not to use styrofoam. Hey man, can you buy something from some of our local people? Like, you use an egg. Can you buy that from Holly Creek Farm? You use sweet potatoes. I got a guy in, Monroe who brings me sweet potatoes. He's a sweet potato grower. Can you use that? Yeah, man, I could try to use that. If it's going to cost me, like, I got to figure out what the cost is. I'm like, he's going to charge you half what you pay at the other place, and he's like, okay, now you can afford to buy the eggs from Holly Creek. So now I got, so you start to make those relationships, you start to make that happen. And all of a sudden, hey, it's not so bad to buy something from somebody who's going to help me promote my business. Holly Creek Farm going, hey, check out our eggs at Bad Wolf Barbecue. Well, they've got a good following. They have people loyal to them because they do good work. And now they're saying, hey, these are people who do good work too. Go see them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you build this little circle, and all these circles start to connect, and they start to overlap, and they start to wrap around. And before you know it, that money sort of spins here. Mm-hmm. It doesn't leave. It just stays in cycles, and it circulates here. So while ideology says one thing and you're like, yes, the ideology is catching on. Ultimately, it's the economy that we need to catch on. It's like, I want to make sure that the economy part of this happens.
For sure. For
right?
sure. Because you're the whole, everything else won't exist eventually.
Eventually, if you're willing to just bite off the truck, then what incentive do we have for growers to grow? What incentive do we have for them to participate, right? Yeah. So then why are they here? Do they leave and go to a community that wants them? It's go to the farmer's market on Saturday, man. Go to the farmer's market on Tuesday night and make it an experience, right? There's some fun stuff going on there. They're doing karaoke on Tuesdays, or trivia on Tuesdays, 4 to 7, and then on Saturday, go to the market, man. Go out there and you'll see we have a vibrant, growing community, and we have people who participate. We have people go there every week. They buy their groceries there. They make friends there. They like bringing their kids to hang out there because there's other kids there. And that's what community is about, is having these places to congregate and participate. And the farmers market's a great place. We want to be a secondary location for that. I want what we're doing at Herod Freight House Food Park to be that secondary spot. I want to put comfortable space out there so that people will want to feel like they can come out there and hang out even if they don't buy anything. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't care if you buy something, come and be part of the community, right?
Let's back up for just a second.
Yeah.
I just want to, so you ended up leaving Google.
Yeah.
And I guess where did the idea come to start your own deal and to come back here?
So the thing to start my own deal happened between that Cirrus Logic and the Google job. I started really business planning. I took all that business knowledge I gained from Aramark and some of the business planning stuff that I got to do with the business development guys at Cirrus when we were talking about moving into a restaurant space for them. And looking at that, and we started to talk about it, and I really told my wife, I was like, I'm gonna see if this works. I'm gonna go and see if I can't build out a 45 or 50 seat restaurant in Austin and really focus in on some things I want to do. And it's really unbelievably expensive to build anything out anywhere, but in Austin it's even more so.
Yeah.
And I think that the real estate market there is such that the real estate guys are holding all the cards. I mean, like all of them. So when you get down to the last minute of it, they're just like, oh yeah, oh, and by the way, we're gonna have to change this and change that and change this and change this. All of a sudden they're like, hey, so if you'll just write me a check for $2.5 million, I'll give you 1,000 square foot. And you're just like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
And so the idea for wanting to do something of my own was pre-Google.
Kind of
after
period.
Yeah. So after getting shot down a couple of times, and after seeing some after visiting with some banks and them just going, yeah, it's just not going to happen. You need more cash. You need an investor. You need a partner. Which are all things that are disadvantageous to ideology. Partners want to be paid now.
Yeah.
They don't care about ideology. They don't care about it. Like, finding a partner that wouldn't care about ideology and doesn't care about getting their money today would be a boon to anybody, right? Those people almost never exist. If there was one out there, I'd be surprised. But most of them really care about getting their money back really fast and getting huge returns on their money.
Yeah.
And they don't care if you're trying to do good in the world. If you happen to do good while getting their money, then you're a genius, according to them, and they're ready to lend you some more money so they can make some more money on your ideology, as long as you pay them first.
Right.
Ideology be damned, right? So, Google is sort of the consolation prize. But again, I'm a firm believer in things happen at the right moment in time for a reason. Like, they happen when they're supposed to happen for you at the right time. Should I have bought money? I should have been able to get money to buy Trenton Street when I did. My ideology and the impact that I can make on Ruston wouldn't be as great as it is now. If I can work out a deal and I get a job, and not get a job, but build out a space with Cirrus Logic and do that, I get to contribute to them, but again, I don't get to actually ultimately learn about an ideology that I feel is more valid than the one that Cyrus was pushing, which is culture, culture, culture. Not necessarily let's be a good steward of this system, right? Theirs is about culture. So you get to Google, and Google says culture's great. We have great culture, but also what that culture means to the greater good of the environment you're in is much more important. And that is food, that's business, that's everything, right? So having those misses or having those disappointments aren't really disappointing when you get to this point in your life and you're like, okay, I'm willing to risk everything I do have because now I feel like I have the ideology that I believe in. I have the tools that I need in order to succeed. And I feel like at this point is a more correct time for this to happen. Ruston 19 years ago wouldn't accept what we're doing right now. It'd be really hard pressed to convince someone to come out and pay, a little bit more for something that's better because it supports something else. More people would have been about like, I don't know why it's so expensive.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
Instead, we have people like, I love what you're doing. This is great. I like that you're using local ingredients. I like that you support local consumers and local growers and local producers.
Willing to spend that extra dollar to,
and they're willing to spend an extra $1 or $2 to do it. And in reality, we're not that far off. I mean, I don't even know if it's $1 or
no.
$2. I mean, it might be 50 cents or 75 cents.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it gets lost on people that when they come up and we tell them what the price is, that price that we tell you is the price you see on the board and it's tax included. So, when we sell you a $10 burger, it's actually an $8.75 burger with tax.
Right.
So,
right.
And that's the thing. It's like, we're giving you an end price to make it easy for you to understand what the end cost is. So reality is that some people see that price and then they're automatically adding this tax thing to it when the tax is already in it. So they think we're expensive, but we're really not.
Yeah.
We're kind of in the wheelhouse. We're within 50 cents of everybody else. In some cases, we're cheaper than other people. But yeah, I think that wanting to do something has always been there. And I think, you leave for a culinary school, you get a degree, you work around. At some point you feel like, yeah, I have to do something for myself. Sometimes just paying for things means you don't get to do what you want to do for yourself right now, but later you get to do that. And I mean, like I said, we're at a point in Ruston's history where the entity that has been here looming forever is finally acceptable to be a part of the community at Ruston, right?
Yeah.
I love the way the mayor puts it. And he says, when he says, Ruston is a town with a college in it and we want it to be a college town. 'Cause I think that's a perfect way to say it. Ruston is on the cusp of being a real college town where the name of the university and town are synonymous. Right now you can say Louisiana Tech to people and they say like, where's that?
Right.
Ruston.
Yeah.
You say Ruston to people and they go, well, where's that? And you go, well, Louisiana Tech is there. And oh yeah. I know Tech. Right. So they're not synonymous.
Right.
There are numerous universities that you can name and the town is the second thing that you hear out of somebody's head. Right. So, I think that's where we're at right now. We're on the cusp of turning over, but in order to be that, we have to have amenities that entice more younger people. Like having that 27.5-year-old target of people moving and congregating to Lincoln Parish is great, but what really needs to happen is it needs to stay there and needs to grow, and that number needs to come down. Not necessarily 20 somethings, but it needs to come down to that 27 and not 27.5, where we have this population that's like young families, young professionals, grad students who are coming here who are deciding they want to stay here, that there's something for them to be here for, that there's work opportunity, that there's space for them to lease so that they can start their business. All of these things are here, and I'm fortunate to be put in a place because this is like a chain of events and circumstances. It's like I bought a house here. You know, so my wife and I decided that it would be a smart move. We coming back. My brother lives here. My niece and nephew are here. My sister-in-law teaches at Ruston Junior High. You know, it's like all these things are here, and we've been coming back and seeing Ruston grow, and we see it expand, and we see it go to this. You know, we got a new farmers market, and we got all these things growing, and man, housing, and man, the downtown looks awesome. You know, all this work has been done to bury power lines and making a more walkable downtown, and we have Raw shows up 8 years ago at this point, and we're like, wow, a sushi bar in Ruston, like that's gonna be here for 6 months, you know. And here they are, they're 8 years later, and they're really good at what they do, good. Right? And people are accepting of it. Like that place is always packed, and people accept it. And what would have been, you know, 20 years ago, no, sushi not here. No, that's a big city thing. We don't do that here. You know, they hit the mark, they did it well, they executed, and they made it stick, and it stuck long enough to actually become a permanent part. Because they did what they did, you get utility. You get railway coffee. You know, you get some premium level players in the game of hospitality. So you see all these little things starting to come on, you know, and right about then is when, you know, utility wasn't a thing yet. Railway coffee was, you know, in Mike's garage or something. I don't even know. At that point, he was running with this little like 2-pound coffee roaster thing. And we were coming to the market, and he was there selling coffee and working on the opportunity to maybe move into a spot. You know, we bought this house thinking, hey, in 15 years, this is going to be a great town. You know, we could leave Austin, sell our house, and we can move here, and man, we could have a good life here. You know, we have all these amenities by then. You know, you think the curve of growth is going to be great. There's going to be some more local places. There's going to be cool stuff downtown. The university's booming. You know, you're like, everything's happening, you know? And then you get that random phone call from somebody that says, hey, would you be interested in talking to the mayor about that building that's over near the railroad tracks? And I'm like, the big warehouse that used to be on-time feeders? And I'm like, yeah. You know, it's like he's got this idea, and he pitched it at me, and I'm like, I can't do that. It's way out of my league. But, you know, you bought a house, and I think maybe you might be interested in it. I'm like, yeah, I bought a house. I'm coming in 15 years. You know, yeah, you should just talk to him. So, I reach out, and we set a meeting, and I sit down with him and Ammon Jordan, who's a business development guy. And the pitch happens, and it's like, hey, we want to do this. I'm like, I think it's a great idea for Ruston. You know, it's like, well, what do you think? Was it something you'd be interested in managing for us? And I'm like,
Yeah, let's just pause it for 1 second.
Sure.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. So anyway, it's like, right time, right place, right? So the mayor's, you know, we get a meeting with the mayor and Ammon Jordan, and they have an idea, and I think the idea is great. But at that point, when we were pitching this idea, I'm willing to help in whatever way I can. I'm just not ready to move here at this point. You know, I don't think it's viable for me to think about moving. Google's growing. I'm helping with architectural designs there. You know, like as an input, like I'm an input for an architecture company. You know, with a whole bunch of other people at Guggenheimer, which is the company I was working for. You know, we're all meeting with these architects, and we're all talking about it, and you know what flow and form and space means, and how do we want people to move, and what do we want them to see, and this whole 9 yards. So when they pitch an idea,
awesome that like you have that both of those backgrounds, and then they collide,
right? Yeah. So they're able to collide, but they're also very they're very similar in the way creativity works, in that, you know, it's like things that you build, like, you know, it's like you build pastries, you build plates, right? You do and they're like, you really say that, it's like, build that, like we got to build this plate, you know? And it's like, you have to build it. It has to have a foundation. It has to have structure. It has to look good. It has to fit a purpose. It has to be visually appealing. It has to have all the bells and whistles that if you're going to create a nice piece of sculpture or architecture, have to have. Like, it has to be functional. It has to be well thought out. All the pieces and parts have to work together, and it has to work on so many different levels. But, you know, we really, like, it's a common thing to say. It's like, I need you to build that plate now. You know, it's like, build it. And literally, you're building it. You're putting pieces upon pieces upon pieces to get this thing to work, right? So it's the same thing. So they have a great design. They have a great idea. The design is a little bit, just it's very, this fits my bill, but it's not, this is leasable to somebody else, or this is doable in order to incubate a new business.
Right.
Things. So we talked about it, and I made some suggestions, and we made some changes, and things like that. And, one thing leads to another, and I'm like, it's like, they're like, well, would you do it? And I'm like, I'd be happy to do it, but there has to be more here, So we talk about it. They're like, I'm willing to give it a shot. Let's see what we can do. Fortunately for me, it's one of those things where it's a small enough project that it's a project we can take private. And that's where we're at right now. We're working on drawings. Lincoln Builders has contracts with us right now, to be a builder for it. And we're working with Marla Emery and Robert Brooks at the School of Architecture. They own their own little studio. They do some outside projects, and this is one of them. And fortunately, like, they're friends with friends of mine. I've got a friend who teaches at School of Design who's helping with graphics and marketing pieces. And Robert and Marla want to do things that are fun and creative and bring value to the community. And they see the same value that I see in doing something like this, because we get to incubate small business, and we get to do all these things all as part of a bigger picture. We already do it. Chindian Flavors takes over my truck on Friday nights, on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. They're doing it this week, actually. And she makes Indian food. She's from Trinidad. She's half Indian, half Chinese. And she grew up making this sort of, Caribbean style or Caribbean versions of Indian foods. And she does a really good job of it. And it's an opportunity for me to give her an opportunity to showcase what she does, and hopefully gain enough following to actually maybe grow her business so that she can move out of my space and move into a space of her own.
Right.
And who knows, maybe it's a space on our property in another food truck.
Yeah.
That she rents a space from us now. She owns her own food truck, and she moves it in there. And now we have a small business that was incubated inside of another business. And that's the goal. It's like, make another one. Like, let's put another business in. Let's grow somebody else's business.
Make the circle a little bit bigger.
Make the circle a little bit bigger, right? Encourage them to buy something from a local source. Mandate that they do in some aspects. But I mean, you think Andrew at Bad Wolf Barbecue is, working on a bricks and mortar in Jonesboro.
Right.
His intent is to blow up the business that he's got a foothold in. He's already doing it here. It took him a little bit to understand the value of being in the same place every day, all the time. But the value has been that there's some consistency to the way you can produce. There's some consistency in learning that, bricks and mortar is going to run that way. Like, you're going to be open from this time to this time, and you're going to have to be able to service that and how that works. So, hopefully him being on property has given him a little bit of exposure to what it could be. Right. And it's encouraged him to go out and make an investment and try to seek out a bricks and mortar, so what's that next business? What's the next one that wants to come in and help solidify the circle and grow their own reputation or grow their concept? That's what we're there for. That's what we want to do. We want to be able to not only, it's selfish in a way, and it's not selfish in another way. And I see I see the selfish piece of it for me is, it's not necessarily, it's not a money grab. Like, people go, it's like, well, you're going to run all these things. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm like, we're going to release these things out. Yeah, the selfish piece for me is that I get access to all these things, but I also get to steer the message. I also get to create a culture that says, this is the way a food system should work. I get to be selfish in that I get to drive that message home. I get to dictate to these incubators, to these people, hey, this is a better way to do this, right? We're not going to allow you to buy a bunch of French fries off a Cisco truck, right? We're not going to let you buy a bunch of onion rings, right? If you want to be the onion ring truck, man, buy some onions, make some batters, get some cool sauces, and make some onion rings.
Yeah.
I don't care that you're making onion rings, right? It's like, if you're going to run that thing as a professional onion ring stand, it's a professional onion ring stand.
Right.
Right? It's like, we want you to do it the right way, right? And that's where we're at. It's like, we hope that very soon we'll be able to actually start building out that front section of this piece. We want to historically restore the Herd building, which is actually a grocery warehouse when it was originally built. So we're taking a food business and moving it back into what was built as a food business. Yeah. Right. And hopefully in the process, we're distributing some food again. right? But we're distributing in a different way. We're building real food and we're selling it to customers in our market, and that we can encourage maybe some people from other markets to come and see what we're doing and take that back to their markets, and it doesn't take long before you develop a radius of like-minded thinking about what real food is and what real food can be, and then you build a culture of food. I mean, New Orleans didn't start, as New Orleans. I mean, it's a port city that becomes a food city and a music city and all these things. And it doesn't happen overnight. You have to change the way that the people in the environment think about what you are in order for you to become what you eventually become.
For sure.
And I think that what we're headed towards is being a real college town with a vibrant downtown food scene.
Yeah.
And I think that we can make that happen. And I don't think it takes that long to make that happen. I think it takes less time to make it happen. It takes longer for it to be acceptable by people around you. I think the people in this town will accept it once it's there. I think getting it 30 miles down the road, 60 miles down the road this way, 100 miles north and 100 miles south, and getting those people to accept it for what it is and buy into that concept of, hey, that's a destination to go. If you want to go somewhere on the weekend, man, Ruston's a great place.
Yeah.
We got great things, man. I mean, Makers Fair, Railroad Festival, all of these things are new, right? And they're all getting a pretty good bit of participation. So I think Ruston's ready for it. I think Ruston's got this opportunity to make everything happen. So
no doubt. And you kind of already talked about it. You started to recognize that it was a kind of a perfect storm brewing here, and things were setting up. And obviously, you got kind of some inside information as to where the mayor wanted to take this area. And
I kind of, and I think it's not a secret either. I don't think it's inside information to sort of quell that. I think it's because he's very vocal about what he wants to do. He wants a vibrant downtown. He's got a book that went from, a city planning book that was this thick. They took it down to this little, really colorful, really bright, really focused. Like if we can really just not get into the detail of it, if we just say we want a vibrant, bright local food scene, boom, page 1, done. Yeah. Right. He put that out there, and when you pick that up and you read what the plan is, you're just like, wow, this is doable. It's not big, it's not crazy. It's a really doable, accessible plan. It's simplistic when you see it in a picture and a couple of blurbs about this is what we intend to do. And if you look at that whole plan, it's taking this town and making it a destination that people want to be back in. So recover some of the people who left over time because they've experienced better, they've experienced more, they've experienced different. And now when they come back, they'd like to see more, see different. And that gives you a base to work to your next level. So now I can actually put 5 apartments above the fabric shop downtown and they're going to rent.
Yeah.
When 25 years ago, if you put 5 apartments in the fabric shop downtown, people would have been like, you're a moron, right? There's never nobody wants to live next to the train above the sewing machine shop.
Yeah.
And now there'll be 5 people, at least 5 people living above the fabric.
Is that what's happening
store.
there?
Yeah.
I saw it was getting something done to it.
Well, you look at Tam and Long from Raw, they built a 2,200 square foot apartment for themselves above the old Lewis's Stag Shop. And they have short-term leasing space for guests downstairs. And that's amazing because if you told me that 25 years ago in this town, I would have said, like, no way.
Yeah.
I mean, and I give credit to guys like Robert Sharp, who built an apartment above his law firm. His law offices, God, like what, 1990s?
Yeah.
Dude's been living downtown for 20 years.
Yeah.
People thought he was crazy. People thought he was crazy. You want to live there? Where are you going to park? Because, man, everybody's concerned about parking, right? We come back around the parking.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Ruston's terrible to park in. Like, no, it's not. Austin's terrible to park in.
Yeah.
When you have to park your car somewhere and get a cab so you can catch an Uber to get where you're going, That's a parking issue.
That's a bad parking issue.
That's a parking issue. We don't have a parking issue here. What we have is a we don't want alternative means issue.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But no, I mean, I think Ruston's ready for it. I'm happy to contribute to it. I mean, in fact, I'm excited. I'm really excited to contribute to it because I think all fair. It doesn't matter if I end up, it's like you have this idea like, hey, if I stay in Austin for 15 years, I'll have this much money, and I'll be able to do nothing after that. I can just sit around. And I can just pick up a catering job, or I can do some private cooking classes or whatever. And you go, wow. But then I go, you know what? I just cashed in everything and I built a food truck and I moved to Ruston. And you know what? If that food truck pays for itself and as long as I'm comfortable and I still have a house to go to every night, I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So how long has Grazed been downtown?
So we started February 1st, 2018. So a little over a year and a half at this point. I mean, summers in Ruston are a little bit daunting, but school's about to start back up. I think we get a new lease on on the vibe because we have a whole new freshman class that are coming in. I mean, last year we hit Dog Days of Summer, which is, again, it goes back to the, if you include the students in your downtown, you get to see them in your downtown all the time, and they have money to spend, and they have an ideology of their own about what's good and bad, and you can influence that one way or the other, but also they're coming to you with influence too, because maybe they already want what you're trying to do, which means that, hey, this is a better place to be than that other place I was going to go because these guys already have the cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
They already have the things that I wanted in a small town. But Dog Days of Summer gave us access to everybody coming in for orientation last year because it happened right downtown. They do a scavenger hunt. We were on a scavenger hunt. They come, they get their name checked off of their little sheet. They come talk to us about what we do, so we get to tell them what we're doing. This is our second year of doing that. So now we have sophomores and freshmen who heard what we're trying to accomplish and are going to come back.
Had a literal forced interaction with you.
So we have a forced interaction, but that forced interaction, if it brings me 5, 10, or 15 of 2,000 students, those 5, 10, or 15 students grab 2, 3, 4 students. Those 2, 3, 4 students grab 2, 3, 4 students. You grow the circle on campus as to what's coming downtown. Somebody said you're never going to get 8,000 students to come downtown. That's just not possible. So I don't want 8,000 students to come downtown. I want a small percentage of this class and a small percentage of the next class and a small percentage of the next class. And by the time we get to year 4 of doing these Dog Days of Summer, my seniors already know we existed. They've already spread the message. And those seniors have spread the message out to other seniors, to juniors, to sophomores, and so on. So that when the freshman class comes in, we're something they're looking forward to before they ever get here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not about capturing 8,000 students today. It's about capturing a few small students right now and changing the mentality of what it is they do.
No doubt.
It's exactly how you change the corporate culture and environment. We had people at Google who only wanted brisket. When I left after 5 years of being there, these are the same people who are like, hey man, when are you guys doing Faro again? Hey man, I really like that freeka. I'm like, really? You like a grain called freeka, right? Or hey, when are you guys gonna pickle carrots again? I love the clove pickle carrot you guys do. Like, and these are people who are just like, I just want meat, I just want bread, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Right. And, and then you see them 5 years later and they're like, they're like, hey, what are you doing on Friday? Friday's a day for experiments. That's the day we throw out the weird stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome. What are you doing Friday? Right. It happens small.
Mm-hmm.
You just start in little small increments. And if you can get just 1 or 2, if you can figure out that guy who only eats meat and bread has friends who eat everything, that make sure that they're helping you push that along.
For sure.
So I get the one little percentage over here who gets me another percentage.
Yeah.
That's the concept I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
If I can get that guy, he's going to sell me to the next guy.
For sure. Well, and that, I definitely had a similar experience. I saw the trailer downtown and was like, all right, food trucks. Food trucks are a popular deal going on nowadays around the country, and I'll be honest, I was kind of the late majority to come check you out. And then one day I went and had breakfast, and I had biscuits and gravy with bacon and eggs, and egg was oozing all over the place, and I was just absolutely in heaven. And I was like, man, I got to come back and check everything else out. And then, you know, we have that conversation, and I see that you're previously invested in this community and now heavily invested again, and very much so looking to the future and trying to, I don't know if you would label it, but you are being a leader in this community and pushing it forward and
I appreciate that. I like, that's something that, you know, it's humbling to be accepted as a person who's taking charge of something or leading something. Because, you know, with that becomes the burden or the responsibility of executing that thing. But at the same time, it's like, I'm willing to take on that challenge. I appreciate that. I'm willing to take on the challenge of it because I know it's doable, number one. So, you know, I know it's not an easy doable, but I know it's a doable, and I'm willing to take the challenge and to struggle to get it done. But I have so much help. Like, you know, Miss G. McQueenie, who started the Ruston Farmers Market, is one of the founders of Ruston Farmers Market. You know, she's just relocated to Houston or back to Houston with her husband who teaches there now. And, you know, it's unfortunate we lost her, but, you know, without her thinking about, it's like, you know, I had access to all this stuff in Texas, and I come to Louisiana Tech and there's none of this stuff. So I'm going to create this stuff. I want the things I had in the environment I had before, you know, but she set the groundwork for it. And then leaving, she set a bigger groundwork to help us out. She suggested and created that executive director job at the farmers market. That's Miss Donna Isaacs, who I happened to meet in a local food meeting while being still in Texas. I was on a phone with a bunch of people sitting here at a table in Ruston in the mayor's conference room who were talking about how do we spur on people to buy local food? How do we get our local food movement going? How do we get this happening? How do we make this work? Right. And I'm fortunate to have those kinds of people where she is super invested in growing the community. She is super invested and knowledgeable in growing communities. She's done it in Sarasota, Florida. She's working on it in Campty, Louisiana. And she sees Ruston as, for her, it's the prime market. It wants to do those things. It wants to grow. It wants to become a community that's involved in its local agriculture. It wants to become a community that's invested in its community of education, of workforce, of engagement, right? And she sees all of that, and she's decided that this is a great place to, maybe I don't want to be in this rural environment. Maybe I could do more good for that rural environment if I can get this thing to blow up. Then the rural environment goes, we had our opportunity, we lost it, let's not lose it again, right? And I think that's her mentality of it, and I like it. But I have support from people like that. I have support from all those board members at the, North Louisiana Farm Fresh, which operates the farmers market. We got the mayor's office who's super supportive of anybody who wants to invest in this community, right? With the idea that it's worth investing in. And that's the best part about it. There's people who come out of the woodworks. I have friends who left, who have come back, who want to be involved. My logos, our marketing packages, all of those things were done by Tom Futrell, who's a really old friend of mine. He's not really old, but he's an old friend of mine. You're really old, Tom. But he's just he's a good guy who sees the value in building that community himself, and he wants to help. So, it's like, I need logos, Tom. I need marketing, Tom. I need these things. And we pay him for these things, but, nowhere near what they're worth in the real world. And his idea is that, it's like, hey, I want to help. I want to contribute. I want to see things succeed here. So he doesn't only do it for me. He does it for Rock Island Greenway, where, they're building all the signage and marketing and all that stuff for that. I mean, if you haven't seen that, you got to go see it. It's phenomenal to see what's happened in a short amount of time and what they've done with it. And the marketing package for it is incredible. He and Marla Emery have done a world of work on that. But you see people like her, like Marla and Robert, who are invested in designing the new animal shelter for the city of Ruston. They built collab space. You know, it was a residence, but it's become a thing, right? Louisiana Tech owns that property now, and they built that thing as a residence, but now it's become a space that's a shared space for creativity and design, and that's awesome. And they still want to contribute some more. They asked to be a part of this, but it's like, man, Lincoln Builders. Patrick Ramsey at Lincoln Builders, he and I got to talking. I had no idea who he was. He's going to hate me for saying that. But, it's like I didn't make the connection to Patrick Ramsey and who Patrick Ramsey was. I knew he was Lincoln Builders. I didn't realize he was Patrick Ramsey, ex-NFL football player guy. Yeah, he's going to hate me for that one. But early on in this game, when he and I were chit-chatting, he's like, hey, what do you think about this? And, what are your plans here? What are you doing? He said, I want to help. And it wasn't like, it wasn't a statement of, we need this job. Because they don't. I mean, it's Lincoln Builders, They don't need this job. This is a small potatoes kind of thing, right? But he said, hey, I want to help. I think this is good. I want to help, And he said, I think this is a great idea. This is a good plan. I like the vision for it. He was like, and this is my backyard.
For sure.
This is my backyard. Lincoln Builders wants to help do this, right? And when you hear that from a guy representing a company like Lincoln Builders, you go, okay, maybe
we so hear him out.
maybe if not that I want to hear him out. It's just like not that. It's just okay. Maybe maybe there's some validation at this moment.
Yeah.
When a guy, I'm 3 months in the business, and I tell somebody where I want to go with it, who says, yes, we want to help you get there, right, and we see value in it, and we know that it's gonna work, right. And when you see that from somebody else's perspective, or you see the excitement that somebody else brings to the table,
that keeps
it's
you going.
validity. It keeps you going. It's making your purpose right. It's making the decision a lot easier to swallow, that you decided to pick up a career, move it, and change it, and make it work.
Well, I think something else that it's cool, and you mentioned it earlier, is like you don't have any styrofoam, stuff like that, and you have a can crusher out there, and it's just like it's an
education. It's an education process too.
But you're almost like laying the groundwork for that to start taking over the city, and that's again so inspirational to me to see you go in the extra mile to make sure that kind of thing happens.
It's because it's easy, right? Google is a green facility. Austin's a green city. You have to compost and you have to recycle. It's not a hey, you can if you want to. It's like, no, you have to. Otherwise, you get some bills in the mail for not doing it. And from a restaurant standpoint, you have to compost. Like, there is no throwing away food.
Okay,
you have to compost there. At Google, fortunately, they're like, not only do you have to compost what you can compost, but if you can actually cook, serve, chill what you don't sell, and freeze it so you can get it to a food shelter, then that's what you do. So it's a rare occasion where you throw something away at a Google facility because they like sending to food banks what you don't serve to your Googlers. And while you dial it in, and you keep dialing in your numbers, and you get closer to less waste, you're always going to have some overproduction by default. So being able to distribute that back out in your community is an awesome way to do it. But here, a little bit different. So we do have a recycling program. It's kind of limited, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
So can we participate? Yes. Can we participate better? Yes. But it's groundwork. It's baby steps, right? It's the percentage. I put the can crusher out there. It sat out there for weeks before the first person decided to put a can in it, right? We have a little bit of signage out there now. More people are hitting the can crusher, but it's a can crusher. I mean, I've seen a can crusher. I know what it does. Why am I not using it, right?
Yeah.
If I can reduce, this guy, if I could get people to take the lid off and throw this hole in there, right? That's one thing. But man, if I can get them to, do this and put the lid back on, that's 25% of the volume of this thing, right? So that's 25%. That's 75% savings on space. I could put probably 500 of these water bottles in this condition into one trash can. I could probably put 120 water bottles expanded into that trash can.
Yeah.
Now, can I crush that down into something? Yeah, as long as you didn't put the top back on it. Put the top back on it and throw it in there whole. I'm not crushing that thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the encouragement is the next step is to maybe just take the top off. Please don't put the top up. Don't put the top in.
Yeah.
Right? So that we can crush what's in there.
Right.
Right? Without blowing something up. Right? The next step would be to say, like, hey, let's take these things and crush them down so that they take up 25% of the space they used to. Hey, let's not put foodstuffs in the aluminum cans. We got a little picture there of an aluminum can.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we got it in a big shape and crush shape. And it's like, we still have food going into that. And I'm like, the concept is one thing, right? But put it out there first.
Yeah.
Let it be a thing. Let one or two people know what the real concept is. People who are going to take that thing and read it and go, oh, we want to segregate the cans. Who look at their table and go, okay, no, don't throw your food in there. Your food goes in that one over there.
Yeah.
And the box goes in the end. And eventually it happens. And you know what? We're starting to see that. We're starting to see the person at the table goes, no, don't put your can in there. Yeah. Crush it and put it in. Yeah. Right? Or who goes, hey, crush your water bottles. Here you go. And we got little kids now who take the top off their water bottles or their parents' water bottles. Now they crush their can and then go over there to water bottle and then crush the water bottle because it makes a cool sound, right? And that's the best part is because if I can get the little kid to crush his can every time and I get the little kid to crush his water bottle every time, then we set the stage for him doing that forever. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And recycling becomes a second nature to that little kid that it's not to the 70-year-old person or the 60-year-old person or a 50-year-old person, who's not used to doing it, right? But if you put it out there and you obligate somebody to do it and you educate them in the process, eventually people do it because everybody else is doing it. And if everybody else on the property is crushing their cans and putting them there, then now I have a clean bill of crushed cans or crushed plastic. Plastic goes down to recycling for the city and they make some money on that. But the aluminum we can actually extract from that bag. We can take it down to Mitchell's, we can sell it, get a check, and then go to the farmer's market and go, hey, there's a donation for you. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So we get to not only recycle it in one way, we get to actually earn some money that actually benefits another program somewhere else. So we come back around full circle. So I take something that normally would go right in the landfill and we make a lot of money with it. We give it back to a system that we like, right? I love it. Or we give these to the city and the city takes these and bundles them up and then somebody comes and buys bulk plastic from the city for recycling. So not only do we pay the city to actually collect it as being good stewards of our environments, and being good citizens and saying, hey, I want to participate in recycling, but I also get this little guy and I get the city gets to supplement that and reduce the cost of the end user or you and I to actually go in there and contribute to that system. So if enough people are throwing these in their recycling bin and it's going to the facility and somebody's buying this, eventually that recycling program goes from $10 a month down to $5 a month or something like that, right? Yeah. Or relatively not, or maybe the service gets better. Instead of not taking any glass, we take glass now. Mm-hmm. Right? Or, hey, we not only take these kinds of plastics, we take all plastics, right? Or we single stream it. Put all your recycling in one big bin and we don't care. It's going to go to a sorting facility because we have one. Right. Or to the next level, where that Miss Donna Isaacs comes in, hey, we have 7.5 acres of land doing nothing out on the east side of town. Can we turn that into a compost facility and a farm for the city where we can actually instruct people how to become farmers? Right? And we pay them to learn how to become farmers by growing food, selling it, and paying them with the proceeds, right? So now we can take people who normally wouldn't actually become anything according to everybody around them and make them something and turn them into farmers who grow food that keep people alive, right? And it's little things, but it's the baby step, right? It's the 1 little percent. Take that one person and get them on board with what you're doing, and then they'll transfer that out. I love it. I think we should wrap it up right there. Cool. I absolutely love the way your mind works, and obviously I know you've gone through a lot of experiences to get to that point, and that was whenever we first talked that one day with me and my dad. You were talking, and I quickly realized that you weren't just a food guy, that you had this business side to you, and you manage all these budgets and stuff, and so you could
seen the good and the bad of it, I guess, and had
Yeah.
the experience, and you know that it definitely, like you say, you're in the right place at the right time, and
I think so. I really do. You know, and to have people take an interest in what you're doing helps keep the momentum going. So, you know, thank you for taking an interest and asking me to do this. I know it's been a while.
Yeah, for sure. No,
I'm not. I'm by no means quiet, and I do like to talk. So it's an easy fare for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully, you can pare this down or something into something useful.
No, I love it.
But yeah, man, I appreciate it. It's validating as an experience to come out here and do this, and I really do. I mean, it's like I really do feel like Ruston has always had this potential to be a bigger player and to be more influential, and I think that right now the momentum is really rushing towards that where we're all driving towards that same message, and I think other people taking note. I mean, I hear it all the time from folks in Monroe, West Monroe, who are like, I was like, hey, take a look at Ruston and what they're doing, you know, and I'm by no means coming in at the beginning of this. There are other people who have really worked hard over the last 10 or 15 years to get, you know, Les Geis at Louisiana Tech, you know, as a president of the university, as a contributor, you know, has really looked at the vision of what Louisiana Tech can be and how it can contribute and how it can grow, and how it needs Ruston and how Ruston needs Louisiana Tech. You know, so it's like by no means am I coming in and being like let's do this, right? No, I'm coming in the first 30% of this. People have already laid the groundwork. People already got this ball started, and I feel like, you know, it's like I can contribute. I can push that ball over and make it happen. I think that's the part for me that makes me feel good about it, is that I know I'm not the only one that's pushing. There's other people doing it, and there's more behind me.
Yeah.
You know, there really are. I mean, we'll get back to that 27 and a half years. You know, it's like that's people who are pushing. They may not actually directly push, but they are the impetus for continuing to push. They're the people who are going to be the receiving end of it, and whether they know it or not, they're helping.
For sure. Sweet. Well, tell people where to find you and where you're at and hours, that kind of deal.
So yeah, we're so Grown and Grazed. I own Grown and Grazed. We're right downtown Ruston.
Talk right.
Yeah, right.
Make sure we hear this right.
Yeah, so Grown and Graced. We're located at 93 East Railroad Avenue, just south of the tracks on the Vienna side, in downtown Ruston. Located in the old Raymond Hurd Incorporated Warehouse Number 2 parking lot. And there's more to come to that site. But we're open as Grown and Grazed Monday to Saturday from 7 to 3. We do breakfast from 7 to 10:30 a.m. and we do lunch from 11 to 3. Occasionally we'll stay open at night if there's something going on in downtown. You can find Chindian Flavors there every other weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. She works 5 to 8. Her name is Kimlin Hall, and again, that's Chindian Flavors. She's on this coming weekend, which will be today's the 7th, so 8th, 9th, something like that, 8th, 9th, 10th. And then she'll be off for a weekend and she'll come back. Yellow Nitro is another one of our trucks. My wife and I, Diane, she's actually kind of spearheading that thing. We have Matt Cassidy working it as well. So Matt is kind of our go-to guy. He's our manager, our daily guy. We're there Tuesday through Saturday, noon to 8 p.m. And again, we have the opportunity to stay open a little later or so if there's some special events going on, some things happening in downtown. And then Bad Wolf Barbecue is there. They joined us in February. Andrew Caskey doing a phenomenal job. He is there on Tuesdays through Saturdays as well. He shows up at 11. Or not shows up at 11, but he opens the window at 11 and it goes until he sells out. So he prepares a little more on the weekends or, Friday, Saturdays, so that he has a longer stay there. But his goal is to sell out. He makes really high quality barbecue, and he doesn't want to ever have to do anything where he reheats anything. So he takes anything that is left over on occasion and sends it over to Utility. So a circle of friends there sends it up to Utility. They make a pizza called the American Dream. So that has smoked brisket on it. So big circles, little circles, all working together, trying to promote each other and make sure that people come downtown. So come downtown, come see us.
No doubt.
Quality local ingredients across the board.
For sure. Sweet. Well, thank you for your time and thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for asking, man.
This is absolutely incredible. So
I appreciate
really
it. No, man, thank you. Yeah,
right.
definitely.
Well, we'll catch up with you down the line, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely do.
Sweet. Peace.